Hey there, and welcome to Crime for Sleep. I know you're having trouble falling asleep, so let me keep you company with true crime stories from around the world. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where did you first hear this one? If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now get comfortable, and let's get into tonight's case. Crime 1, the dresser came with the apartment. It looked old but solid, with one drawer permanently sealed shut. I didn't care at first, there was plenty of storage. But that drawer began to bother me, not because I needed the space, but because of the quiet tapping that sometimes came from inside, like fingernails. I forced it open with a crowbar one night, expecting dust and wood. Instead, I found clippings from newspapers, violent stories, each one underlined. There were names scribbled in red and one last piece of paper. It said, "One more and you're free. I haven't slept since." The first article was about a woman found in her kitchen, sprawled across the linoleum floor. The headline was circled 3 times in that same red ink. Her name was highlighted, but it meant nothing to me then. The second clipping described a man discovered in his garage, tools scattered around him like he'd been working on something important. Again, the name was marked, underlined with such pressure that it had torn through the paper. I spread them across my coffee table that first night, my hands shaking as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. The paper felt brittle between my fingers, yellowed with age and something else I didn't want to identify. Each article carried the same musty smell, like old books left in a basement too long. But underneath that familiar odor was something sharper, metallic. It reminded me of the copper taste you get when you bite your tongue too hard. The landlord had seemed nervous when I signed the lease. He kept glancing at that dresser, running his fingers through his thinning hair. When I asked about moving it out, he said it was permanently fixed to the wall. Structural reasons, he claimed. Now I understood why his voice had wavered when he said it. I started researching each case, spending hours at the library because I couldn't bring myself to search for these stories at home. The woman in the kitchen had been found by her neighbor, who noticed her dog barking for days. The man in the garage was discovered by his brother, who'd come to borrow a wrench. Both cases had been closed quickly. Natural causes for her, accidental death for him. But the details in the newspaper clippings told different stories than what the police reports concluded. Someone had been watching these people. Someone had cared enough to cut out their stories, to mark their names, to keep their deaths close. The handwriting in the margins was careful, precise, not frantic or chaotic like you'd expect from someone unhinged. This was methodical, planned. I found myself returning to that drawer every night, running my fingers along its edges. The wood was smooth except for small indentations near the lock, scratches that looked deliberate. When I held a flashlight close, I could see they formed patterns, numbers maybe, or letters. My eyes would water trying to make them out, but I kept looking anyway. The previous tenant had lived here for 15 years. The landlord mentioned this casually when I called to ask about the apartment's history. 15 years of tapping sounds coming from inside that drawer. 15 years of someone living with whatever was hidden inside. When I asked why he moved out, the landlord's voice got quiet, said he'd gone to live with family, needed help with things, didn't elaborate on what kind of help. I started having dreams about those newspaper clippings. In the dreams, I was reading them, but the names kept changing. Sometimes they were names I recognized from my own life. Sometimes they were names I'd never heard but somehow knew. I'd wake up with the taste of copper in my mouth and the smell of old paper clinging to my clothes. The third week after opening the drawer, I noticed something new. A small piece of paper had appeared underneath the others. Fresh white paper, not yellowed like the rest. My name was written on it in that same careful handwriting. Below my name was an address, my address. I called the police, but what could I tell them? That someone had broken into my apartment to leave me a note with my own address. that I'd found old newspaper clippings in a drawer. They took a report, but I could hear the skepticism in the officer's voice. He suggested I change my locks and maybe consider moving if I felt unsafe. But I couldn't move, not yet, because I'd started to recognize the pattern in those clippings. The woman in the kitchen had lived alone, just like me. The man in the garage had recently moved to a new place, just like me. Both had been found by people who'd noticed something was wrong, but only after days had passed. Days when no one had checked on them. Days when no one had missed them enough to worry. I began documenting everything, taking photos of the clippings, copying down the exact wording of the notes. The red ink had a particular quality to it, almost brown in certain light. When I held the papers up to my window, I could see watermarks I hadn't noticed before. Circles and lines that might have been stains or might have been something more intentional. The landlord stopped returning my calls. When I went to his office, the secretary said he was out of town indefinitely. Family emergency, she explained, but she wouldn't meet my eyes when she said it. The building's maintenance requests started going unanswered too. Small things at first, a dripping faucet, a loose doorknob, then bigger issues. The heat stopped working efficiently. The hallway lights began flickering. I started staying awake later, listening for sounds in the walls. The apartment building was old, full of settling noises and creaking pipes. But sometimes I heard something different. Footsteps in the hallway that stopped just outside my door. The sound of someone trying keys in locks that didn't belong to them. Whispers in the walls that might have been voices or might have been wind through old ventilation systems. The final clipping appeared on a Thursday. I hadn't opened the drawer in 3 days, trying to pretend it didn't exist. But when I came home from work, I could smell that metallic scent stronger than before. The drawer was slightly open, something I was certain I'd never seen before. Inside was a fresh newspaper clipping. The paper was still crisp, the ink still dark. It was about a person found in their apartment, sitting at their kitchen table with old newspapers spread in front of them. The cause of death was listed as undetermined. The name highlighted in red was mine. But the newspaper was dated for tomorrow. I'm writing this now because I need someone to know. The drawer is tapping again, but louder this time. The sound isn't coming from inside anymore. It's coming from somewhere else in the walls, or maybe from outside my door. I can't tell the difference anymore. The copper taste won't leave my mouth, and every time I close my eyes, I see that careful handwriting spelling out names I don't want to recognize. The note at the bottom of the drawer said, "One more, and you're free." I thought it meant someone else needed to die, but I'm starting to understand that freedom isn't always what we think it is. Sometimes it's just the end of waiting for something we were never meant to survive. The tapping has stopped now. The silence is worse. Crime 2, it was supposed to be a joke. My neighbor left it in my yard, smiling with its chipped paint and weird glass eyes. I kept moving it back. Then it started showing up in places I never touched, near my window, on my porch, inside the garage. I destroyed it with a hammer, buried the pieces, but it came back intact. A note was stuck in its base. "I see how you sleep." That night I heard glass crunching under my bed. The gnome hadn't moved again. Something else had taken its place. That was the story I told the police. But stories have a way of changing when you tell them enough times, and I've been telling this one for months now. The truth is, I never destroyed that gnome. I wanted to. I held the hammer over it for what felt like hours, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the way those painted eyes seemed to watch me, or maybe it was the growing certainty that breaking it wouldn't solve anything. The real problem wasn't the gnome at all. I started keeping a journal after the first incident, not because I believed in the supernatural. I'm a practical person, always have been, but because I needed to document what was happening. The entries started simple enough. Gnome moved from backyard to front porch. Found gnome in garage, don't remember putting it there. standard stuff for someone slowly losing their grip on reality. But then I started writing about other things. The smell of cigarette smoke drifting through my kitchen window, even though I don't smoke and my neighbor claims she quit years ago. The sound of footsteps in my attic during the quiet hours when sleep should come easily. The way my mail seemed to arrive already opened, envelopes carefully resealed with just enough precision to make me question my own memory. I began visiting the local library, not for books, but for their computers. I needed to research my property, my neighbors, the history of this place that I'd called home for 3 years without ever really knowing. The librarian, a woman with silver hair and tired eyes, helped me navigate the digital archives. She seemed familiar, though I couldn't place where I might have seen her before. The records told a different story than the one I'd been living. My house had been empty for 18 months before I moved in. The previous owner, a man whose name appeared and disappeared in the documents like a ghost, had filed multiple complaints with local authorities. Harassment, stalking, break-ins. The complaints stopped abruptly. No resolution, no forwarding address, just silence. I found photographs in the Historical Society's collection, images of the neighborhood from various decades. My house appeared in several, but it was the background details that caught my attention. A garden gnome sat in the same spot where I'd first found it, visible in pictures spanning nearly 20 years. The same chipped paint, the same glass eyes. The woman at the Historical Society, different from the librarian but equally familiar, showed me how to access police records. Public information, she said, though her fingers hesitated over the keyboard. The files revealed a pattern I wasn't prepared for. Complaints from residents on my street going back decades, always the same story. Small items moving, sense of being watched, cigarette smoke, footsteps. Always the same resolution, insufficient evidence to proceed. I started paying attention to details I'd previously ignored, the way my neighbor's curtains moved when I walked to my mailbox, the fresh cigarette butts that appeared in my garden, always in the same spot, always the same brand, the fact that I'd never actually seen my neighbor's face clearly, despite living next door for 3 years. One afternoon, I decided to knock on her door. It was a simple plan, introduce myself properly, maybe ask about the gnome, see if I could get a straight answer about anything. The door opened before I could knock. She was expecting me, she said, and invited me in for coffee. Her house was the mirror image of mine, but everything felt wrong. The furniture was arranged exactly as I'd arranged mine. The same coffee mug I'd used that morning sat on her kitchen table. The same magazine I'd been reading lay open to the same page. When I mentioned the similarities, she laughed and said, "Great minds think alike." She served coffee in cups that matched my dinnerware exactly. We talked about the neighborhood, the weather, the way property values had been changing. Normal conversation, but her voice carried an echo that made my skin crawl. When I finally asked about the gnome, she smiled and said she'd never seen it before. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the visit, about the way she'd known I was coming, about the identical furniture and the coffee cups and the magazine. I went to my kitchen for water and found the gnome sitting on my counter, positioned so it faced the window that looked directly into her house. A new note was attached to its base. "We need to talk." I called the police the next morning. The officer who came was polite but skeptical. He took notes, photographed the gnome, asked about my relationship with my neighbor. When I mentioned the identical furniture, he looked up from his notepad with the expression of someone who'd heard this story before. He suggested I consider counseling. Stress, he said, could manifest in unusual ways. The mind had a tendency to create patterns where none existed. He left his card and promised to drive by more frequently, though I could tell he wouldn't. That evening I sat in my living room with the lights off, watching my neighbor's house through the window. I could see her moving around inside, but something about her movements seemed choreographed, as if she were performing for an audience. She would walk to her window, look directly at my house, then disappear for exactly the same amount of time before repeating the pattern. I decided to test something. I turned on my kitchen light, waited, then turned it off. Within seconds, she did the same. I moved to my bedroom and turned on that light. She followed. Every movement I made, she mirrored. The realization hit me like cold water. She wasn't watching me. She was mimicking me. But why? I spent the next few days researching identity theft, fraud, anything that might explain someone copying my life so precisely. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. Case studies of people who had lost their identities to individuals who'd studied their habits, their routines, their personal details. People who'd found their bank accounts drained, their credit ruined, their very existence stolen by someone who'd watched them long enough to become them. The gnome was still there, still watching, still carrying its cryptic messages. But now I understood it wasn't the gnome I needed to fear. It was the person who'd been using it to communicate with me, to let me know I was being studied, cataloged, prepared for replacement. I've been writing this account for weeks now, trying to document everything before it's too late. My neighbor hasn't been outside in days, but I can see her silhouette in the window, still mimicking my movements. The gnome has moved again, but this time it's facing away from her house, toward the street, as if it's watching for someone else. Today I found a package on my doorstep. Inside was a set of keys, the same keys I use for my house, my car, my mailbox. The note attached was brief. Thank you for your cooperation. The transition will be seamless. I don't know who to call anymore. The police won't believe me. My friends think I'm having a breakdown. My family stopped returning my calls after I tried to explain about the gnome. But someone out there is planning to take my place, to live my life, to become me in every way that matters. The gnome moved again this morning. It's sitting on my front porch now, facing the street, as if it's waiting for someone to arrive. I can hear footsteps in my attic again, but this time they're different. This time they're learning to walk like me. I'm leaving this account where someone will find it. Maybe it will help the next person who discovers that their life has been chosen, studied, and marked for acquisition. Maybe it will explain why the gnome keeps moving, why the cigarette smoke never stops, why the footsteps in the attic sound more like your own footsteps with each passing night. Or maybe it will just be another story that no one believes, another case file marked insufficient evidence, another person who disappeared without explanation while their life continued on without them. The gnome is smiling at me now. Its chipped paint seems fresher somehow, its glass eyes clearer. It's not the same gnome anymore, just like I'm not the same person who first found it in my yard. We've both been replaced by better versions of ourselves, versions that someone else controls. I can hear a car pulling into my driveway. The footsteps in the attic have stopped. The transition is beginning. Crime 3, the dripping kept me awake for days. No matter how tight I turned the faucet, it never stopped. I bent down to check the pipe, and that's when I heard it, a whisper, garbled, wet, but unmistakably human. At first, I thought it was the plumbing. But then the voice started saying things only I knew, secrets I'd never said out loud. I removed the pipe entirely, and in the sludge I found a recorder, wrapped in plastic, still warm. The voice on it was mine, but I never said any of those words, and I never hit record. My hands shook as I held the device. The plastic was smooth, almost surgical grade, the kind used in medical facilities. Someone had planned this. The recorder was expensive, professional quality, not some cheap electronics store purchase. I pressed play again and my own voice filled the kitchen, confessing to things I'd only thought about, dark thoughts, violent thoughts, thoughts about the woman who lived upstairs. She'd been missing for weeks. The landlord said she'd moved out suddenly, left no forwarding address. But I'd heard her walking around up there even after the official move-out date. Footsteps at odd hours, the sound of furniture being dragged across the floor. I'd assumed she was cleaning, maybe forgotten something. Now I wondered if those sounds were something else entirely. I rewound the recording and listened again. My voice described details about her daily routine that were uncomfortably accurate. How she always checked her mailbox exactly after her morning jog. How she kept her spare key under the third flower pot from the left. How she never closed her bedroom curtains completely. Information I shouldn't have known, yet somehow I did. The smell from the pipes was getting stronger. Not just mold and old water, but something organic, something that had been decomposing. I called the maintenance company, but they said they'd already been to my building recently. Someone had reported a sewage backup in the apartment directly above mine. They'd found nothing wrong with the plumbing. I went upstairs and knocked on her door. No answer as expected, but when I pressed my ear against the wood, I could hear something, not footsteps this time. A low humming sound, almost mechanical, like a refrigerator running or air conditioning, but the electricity to vacant units was always shut off. The landlord was reluctant to let me in, claimed there were privacy issues, liability concerns, but I pressed him, told him about the smell, the sounds. He finally agreed, muttering about difficult tenants and their paranoid complaints. His key turned easily in the lock and the door swung open to reveal an apartment that looked lived in. Fresh flowers on the counter, groceries in the refrigerator, a coffee cup still warm on the kitchen table. The landlord seemed as confused as I was. He checked his records twice, showed me the move-out paperwork with her signature, but everything in the apartment suggested she'd never left. Her clothes hung in the closet, her toothbrush sat by the bathroom sink. Family photos smiled from the mantelpiece. I asked to see the move-out documentation more closely. The signature looked right, but something about the handwriting seemed forced, unnatural. That afternoon, I played the recording for a friend who worked in audio forensics. She ran it through her equipment, checking for digital manipulation, voice synthesis, any signs of tampering. The results were unsettling. The voice was definitely mine, but the recording showed signs of being pieced together from multiple sources. Words and phrases edited together so seamlessly that even professional software barely detected the cuts. Someone had been recording me for months, collecting my voice, learning my speech patterns. They'd taken hundreds of hours of conversation and constructed these confessions, these admissions of guilt. But why? What did they gain by making me sound like a killer? I started checking my apartment for hidden microphones, cameras, any kind of surveillance equipment. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. Tiny recording devices tucked behind outlet covers, under furniture, inside light fixtures. Someone had turned my home into a recording studio without my knowledge. They'd been listening to everything. My phone calls, my conversations with visitors, even my habits of talking to myself. The devices were all the same brand, the same model as the recorder from the pipe. Professional grade, expensive, the kind used by private investigators or law enforcement, but these hadn't been installed by police. There were no warrants, no legal justification. This was personal. Someone wanted to frame me, to create evidence that didn't exist. I confronted the landlord again, demanded to know who had access to my apartment. He was evasive, claimed that only maintenance staff had keys, but his story kept changing. First he said no one had been in my unit for months. Then he mentioned a pest control inspection. Then he admitted that the previous tenant might have kept a spare key. Previous tenant, the woman upstairs, had lived in my apartment before moving to the unit above. She would have known the layout, known where to hide recording equipment, but that would mean she'd planned this before she ever moved upstairs. It would mean she'd been watching me, studying me, preparing to destroy my life from the moment we became neighbors. I found her forwarding address in the landlord's files when he wasn't looking. The address didn't exist. The street number was wrong. The zip code belonged to a different state entirely. Either she'd given false information or someone had altered the records after she disappeared. The signature on the forwarding paperwork looked different from the move-out document, shakier, more desperate. The recording devices in my apartment were still active, still transmitting. I traced the signal using an RF detector, following the frequency until it led me to the basement. In a storage room filled with old furniture and forgotten belongings, I found a computer setup that had been running for weeks. Multiple screens showing feeds from cameras I hadn't even known existed. Hours of footage of me going about my daily routine, unaware I was being watched. The computer files were organized by date, each day's surveillance carefully cataloged and archived, but the most recent files were different. They showed the apartment upstairs, not mine. Someone had been monitoring her too, recording her conversations, tracking her movements. The last file was timestamped from the day she supposedly moved out. In it, she looked terrified. She was talking to someone off camera, pleading with them. I couldn't make out the words, but her body language told the story. She was backing away from whoever was filming, her hands raised defensively. The recording cut off abruptly, but not before I saw something that made my blood freeze. In the reflection of her window, I could see the person holding the camera. It was me. But I'd never been in her apartment before that day with the landlord. I'd never owned a camera like the one in the reflection. Someone had superimposed my image onto the footage, just like they'd constructed those audio confessions from fragments of my voice. I was being set up, but by whom? And why was the evidence so elaborate, so carefully crafted? I called the police, tried to explain about the recordings, the fake evidence, the missing woman. But when they arrived, they found something I hadn't expected. The computer in the basement was registered to my name. The surveillance equipment had been purchased with my credit card. Even the apartment upstairs was now somehow listed as being rented by me, despite the fact that I'd never signed any paperwork. The officers were professional but skeptical. They asked careful questions about my relationship with the missing woman, about my knowledge of the recording equipment, about the confessions they'd heard on the audio files. I tried to explain about the manipulation, the editing, the elaborate frame job, but every piece of evidence pointed back to me as the one responsible. As they prepared to take me in for questioning, one of the officers made a comment that stopped me cold. He mentioned that the woman upstairs had filed several complaints about harassment before she disappeared. Complaints about a neighbor who knew too much about her routine, who seemed to be watching her, who made her feel unsafe. The complaints were filed under my name with my signature. But I'd never harassed anyone. I'd barely spoken to her beyond polite greetings in the hallway. Yet somehow there was paperwork, documentation, a paper trail that painted me as a stalker. Someone had been building a case against me for months, creating evidence that I was dangerous, that I posed a threat. They'd used my own voice, my own image, my own identity to construct a perfect frame. The truth was slipping away from me with each new revelation. Every attempt to prove my innocence only uncovered more evidence of my guilt. Someone had spent considerable time and money to destroy my life, but I still didn't know who or why. As the handcuffs clicked around my wrists, I realized that I might never know. The person who'd done this to me had vanished as completely as the woman upstairs. The last thing I saw as they led me away was a moving truck pulling up to the building. New tenants, probably. Fresh victims for whoever was running this elaborate game. I wanted to warn them, to tell them to check their pipes for recording devices, to watch for voices that shouldn't be there. But who would believe a man accused of making his neighbor disappear? The dripping in my sink had stopped, finally, but I could still hear that voice, my voice, confessing to crimes I didn't commit. And somewhere in this neighborhood, someone was listening to those confessions and smiling, knowing they'd created the perfect crime. One where the victim destroys himself with his own voice, his own image, his own paranoid attempts to prove his innocence. Crime 4, it was stapled to a telephone pole outside the grocery store. Black and white photo, my face. The name below wasn't mine, but the photo definitely was. I pulled it down and took it home. Hours later, I found another on my windshield, then more on my mailbox, my doorstep, even inside my fridge. The number listed at the bottom kept changing. One night, I called it. A voice answered with a question. Why are you still pretending to be someone else? I hung up immediately. My hands were shaking as I stared at the poster spread across my kitchen table. The paper felt cheap, like it had been printed at home. The photo was from my college graduation, but I couldn't remember who had taken it or how someone else could have gotten hold of it. The name printed beneath read Sarah Elizabeth Cross. I had never heard that name before, yet something about it felt familiar in a way that made my stomach turn. The next morning, I decided to drive to the library. I needed to research this name to understand what was happening to me. The librarian, an older woman with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, looked at me strangely when I asked to use the computer. Her eyes lingered on my face longer than necessary, and I caught her whispering to her colleague behind the desk. They both turned to look at me again. I typed Sarah Elizabeth Cross missing into the search engine. The results made my breath catch. News articles dating back 2 years. A young woman who had disappeared without a trace, her family still searching, her mother giving interviews pleading for information, and in every single photo, every single article, the face staring back at me was mine. But it wasn't just the face, it was everything. The mole on my left cheek, the small scar above my eyebrow from when I fell off my bike as a child, the way my hair fell across my shoulders, even the dress I was wearing in the graduation photo, a blue sundress with tiny white flowers that I had bought specifically for that day. I printed out the articles and drove home, my mind racing. In my apartment, I spread everything across my coffee table and tried to make sense of what I was seeing. According to the reports, Sarah Elizabeth Cross had been 23 when she disappeared. She had been working as a substitute teacher. She lived alone in a small apartment downtown. She had been last seen leaving a coffee shop on a Tuesday afternoon. The details were wrong, but the face was undeniably mine. I called my mother that evening, trying to keep my voice steady. I asked her about my birth certificate, about the hospital where I was born, about our family history. She seemed confused by my questions, almost defensive. When I pressed her about whether she had any other children, any daughters she might have given up for adoption, she became quiet. "Why would you ask me something like that?" she said finally. "You know you're my only child." But there was something in her voice, a hesitation that I had never heard before. I spent the next few days digging through my personal documents, birth certificate, social security card, school records. Everything seemed legitimate, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. I found myself staring at old family photos, looking for inconsistencies, for signs that my memories might not be real. Then I found the box in my closet. A small cardboard box pushed far back behind my winter coats. Inside were documents I didn't remember keeping, medical records from a hospital I had never been to, a driver's license with my photo but a different name, and at the bottom a letter addressed to Sarah Elizabeth Cross. The letter was from a lawyer dated 3 years ago. It mentioned an inheritance, a trust fund that had been set up for her. The amount was substantial, enough to change someone's life completely. I sat on my bedroom floor, holding the letter in my trembling hands. The paper smelled like vanilla and cigarettes, a combination that triggered a memory I couldn't quite grasp. I closed my eyes and tried to remember. There was a woman older with kind eyes and a gentle voice. She used to braid my hair and tell me stories about faraway places. But when I tried to focus on her face, it became blurry, like looking through water. The phone rang, startling me back to the present. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. "You found the box," the voice said. It was the same voice from before, but now it sounded familiar, like an echo of something I had heard long ago. "Who is this?" I whispered. "You know who this is," the voice replied. "You've always known." The line went dead. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the woman in my fragmented memory, about the smell of vanilla and cigarettes, about the way her hands felt when she braided my hair. I got up and went to my bathroom, staring at myself in the mirror. The face looking back at me was the same face I had seen my entire life, but now it felt like a stranger's. I touched the scar above my eyebrow, trying to remember how I had gotten it. The story had always been the same, falling off my bike as a child. But now, standing in the dim light of my bathroom, I remembered something different. A woman with dark hair holding a cold compress to my forehead, telling me everything would be okay, that she would take care of me. The woman wasn't my mother. I went back to the library the next day, this time looking for information about adoptions, about missing children, about families who had lost daughters. The librarian watched me again, but this time she approached me directly. "You look familiar," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "There was a girl who used to come in here maybe 3 years ago. She looked just like you. Same face, same hair, but her name was different." "What was her name?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Sarah," she said, "Sarah Cross. She was always researching her family history, trying to find information about her birth parents. She said she had been adopted, but the records were sealed. She spent months coming in here, printing out articles, making phone calls." "What happened to her?" The librarian shook her head. "One day she just stopped coming. I assumed she had found what she was looking for, or maybe she had given up. But then I saw the missing person reports on the news." I thanked her and left, my mind reeling. In my car, I sat in the parking lot and tried to piece together what I was learning. Two women, both with the same face, both searching for answers about their past. One missing, one living a life that might not be real. I drove to the address listed in the newspaper articles as Sarah Cross's last known residence. It was a small apartment building in an older part of town. The landlord, a man in his 60s with calloused hands and tired eyes, looked at me with surprise when I knocked on his door. "I thought you were dead," he said simply. "I'm not Sarah Cross," I told him, but even as I said it, I wasn't sure if it was true. He let me into the apartment. It had been cleaned out, but there were still traces of whoever had lived there. A coffee stain on the kitchen counter, a small nail hole in the bedroom wall where a picture had hung, the smell of vanilla and cigarettes lingering in the air. In the bedroom closet, I found something the cleanup crew had missed. A small piece of paper wedged between the floorboards. It was a phone number, written in handwriting that looked exactly like mine. I called the number from Sarah's apartment. A woman answered, her voice strained and desperate. "Sarah, is that you? Please tell me you're okay." "I'm not Sarah," I said, but my voice was shaking. "Don't lie to me," the woman said, and I could hear her crying. "I know your voice. I've been waiting for you to call. I've been looking for you for 2 years." "Who are you?" "I'm your sister," she said, "your twin sister, and I know what they did to you." The phone slipped from my hand and clattered to the floor. I stared at it, my mind struggling to process what I had just heard. A twin sister, a life I didn't remember, a family I had never known existed. I picked up the phone, but the line was dead. I drove home in a daze, parking in my driveway and sitting in my car for what felt like hours. The house I had lived in for the past 5 years suddenly looked foreign, like a stage set for a life that wasn't mine. I walked inside and went straight to my bedroom, pulling out every document, every photo, every piece of evidence I could find about my identity. The birth certificate showed a single birth. The hospital records mentioned only one child, but as I looked more closely, I noticed discrepancies, dates that didn't match, signatures that looked rushed, a medical record that mentioned complications during delivery, complications that seemed inconsistent with a single birth. I found myself thinking about my childhood, about the gaps in my memory, about the times my mother would change the subject when I asked about my early years. I thought about the recurring dreams I had always had, dreams about another girl who looked exactly like me, dreams about being separated from someone important. The phone rang again. This time I answered immediately. "Meet me at the coffee shop on 5th Street, the voice said. It was the woman who claimed to be my sister. "Come alone and bring everything you found." I wanted to refuse, to hang up and pretend none of this was happening, but I needed answers. I needed to know who I really was and why my face was on missing person posters for a woman I had never met. The coffee shop was nearly empty when I arrived. I recognized her immediately, sitting in a corner booth with her back to the wall. She had my face, my hair, my hands, but there was something in her eyes that I had never seen in my own reflection. A hardness, a wariness that spoke of experiences I couldn't imagine. "You really don't remember, do you?" she said as I sat down across from her. "Remember what?" "The night they separated us, the night they told us one of us had to disappear." She reached across the table and touched my hand. Her fingers were cold, and for a moment I felt that same recognition I had experienced when I first saw Sarah Cross's name on the missing poster. "They gave you a new identity," she continued, "new memories, a new family. They made you forget everything about your real life, about me, about what we witnessed." What did we witness? But even as I asked the question, I could feel something stirring in the back of my mind. A memory that had been buried, suppressed, hidden behind years of artificial normalcy. "The murder," she whispered. "We saw them kill that man, and they couldn't let us both live with that knowledge." The coffee shop around us seemed to fade away. I could see myself as a child holding hands with another girl who looked exactly like me. We were hiding in a closet, watching through a crack in the door as people we trusted did something terrible. The smell of vanilla and cigarettes, the sound of muffled voices. The woman with kind eyes who later told us that everything would be different now. "One of us had to become Sarah Cross," my sister said. "The missing girl, the one who never existed, and one of us had to become you, the survivor with no memory of what really happened." I looked at her, this woman who shared my face but not my life, and I realized that I still didn't know which one of us was which. Was I the real person, or was I Sarah Cross living someone else's life? Did it even matter anymore? The people who did this, I said, are they still out there? She nodded. They've been watching both of us, making sure their secret stays buried. But now that you're starting to remember, now that we've found each other again, they're going to try to silence us permanently. As if summoned by her words, I saw a black car pull up outside the coffee shop. Two men in dark suits got out and walked toward the entrance. My sister saw them too. "We have to go," she said, grabbing my hand. "Now." But as we stood to leave, I found myself wondering if this was really my sister, or if this was just another layer of the deception. Maybe she was one of them, sent to manipulate me, to lead me further away from the truth. Maybe I was Sarah Cross, and the life I thought I had been living was the lie. Or maybe we were both victims of something bigger than either of us could understand. The men in suits entered the coffee shop, their eyes scanning the room. My sister pulled me toward the back exit, but I hesitated. There was something about this moment, about the way the light fell across her face, that triggered another memory, not of childhood, but of something more recent. A conversation I might have had, a plan we might have made, a decision to create our own missing person case, our own mystery, our own way of disappearing from lives that had become unbearable. But I couldn't be sure if the memory was real or if it was just another fabrication, another lie designed to keep me from knowing who I really was. We slipped out the back door into an alley that smelled of garbage and rain. My sister, or the woman who claimed to be my sister, led me to a car parked behind the building. As we drove away, I watched the coffee shop disappear in the side mirror, along with any chance of getting clear answers about my identity. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Somewhere safe," she said, "somewhere they can't find us." But I wasn't sure I trusted her definition of safety. I wasn't sure I trusted anything anymore. The missing person posters were still appearing around town, I was sure of it. My face, Sarah Cross's name, phone numbers that led to voices asking questions I couldn't answer. The truth was out there somewhere, buried beneath layers of false memories and manufactured identities. Maybe I would never know if I was the survivor or the victim, the real person or the missing one. Maybe that was the point. Crime 5, I wiped away the steam after a shower and saw something off. My reflection blinked half a second too late. I thought I was imagining it until it smiled when I didn't. I replaced the mirror, but the new one did the same. I covered it with a towel, but every time I passed by, I felt watched. One day I smashed it. Behind the glass wasn't a wall, it was a hollow space. Inside, there was a camera and a notebook filled with notes about me written in my handwriting. The pages trembled in my hands as I read my own words describing routines I'd never consciously noticed. The way I brushed my teeth in exactly 47 strokes, how I always touched the doorframe twice before leaving the bathroom, details that felt intimate and foreign at the same time, as if someone had been living inside my skin. The camera was still recording. A red light pulsed steadily in the darkness behind where my reflection should have been. I pulled it free from its mounting, feeling the weight of surveillance in my palm. The device was warm, recently active, with a memory card that contained hundreds of files. Back in my bedroom, I scrolled through footage that spanned months. There I was, brushing my hair, washing my face, staring at myself in ways I didn't remember. But something was wrong with every frame. My movements looked rehearsed, mechanical, like I was performing for an audience I couldn't see. The notebook contained more than observations. There were plans written in my handwriting, detailed schedules of my neighbors' routines, sketches of their apartment layout, notes about when they left for work and returned. Names I recognized from my building, addresses, even copies of keys I didn't remember making. I found receipts tucked between the pages. Hardware store purchases for tools I'd never bought, locksmith services I'd never requested, surveillance equipment I'd never needed. All paid for with my credit card, all signed with my signature, all dated within the past 6 months. My phone buzzed with a text from my upstairs neighbor asking if I'd been having trouble sleeping lately. She'd been hearing footsteps above her apartment during the night, she said, but my bedroom was directly below hers. I lived alone on the top floor. The building's security footage would have answers, but when I approached the superintendent, he looked at me strangely. He said I'd already reviewed the tapes twice that month, spending hours in his office going through recordings frame by frame. He showed me the visitor log with my signature, dated just 4 days earlier. I called the credit card company about the suspicious charges. The representative confirmed each transaction, reading back purchase times and locations that aligned perfectly with my work schedule. Security cameras at each store had captured clear images of me making every purchase, she said. I asked her to describe what I was wearing in the footage. She detailed outfits I owned but didn't remember choosing. The locksmith's records showed I'd requested copies of 18 different keys over 2 months. When I visited his shop, he recognized me immediately, commenting on how particular I'd been about the quality of each duplicate. He still had the impressions I'd brought him, pressed into a clay-like substance I didn't recognize. My laptop's browser history revealed searches I'd never made, detailed research about surveillance techniques, guides for entering locked apartments, forums discussing how to observe people without being detected. The searches were conducted from my home network during hours when I thought I'd been sleeping. I installed a security camera in my own bedroom, angled toward the door. The first night's footage showed me sleeping soundly for 8 hours, but the timestamp had gaps, moments where the recording jumped forward, leaving spaces unaccounted for. My sleeping position changed between these gaps in ways that suggested I'd been moving around. The notebook's final entry was dated that morning, written in my careful handwriting. Subject becoming aware of observation. Recommend accelerating timeline. Next phase requires direct contact. Below that, my signature, followed by detailed plans for breaking into my neighbor's apartment. I sat on my bathroom floor, staring at the empty space where my mirror had been. The wall behind it was perfectly smooth, showing no evidence that anything had ever been hidden there. No mounting hardware, no screw holes, no indication that a cavity had ever existed. My reflection stared back at me from the black screen of my phone. I raised my hand and watched it move in perfect synchronization. But when I set the phone down, I could swear I saw my reflection continue waving for just a moment longer. The notebook was gone from my nightstand where I'd left it. In its place was a receipt for a new bathroom mirror, scheduled for delivery that afternoon. My signature was at the bottom, authorizing installation while I was at work. I called in sick and waited by my door, watching through the peephole as 2 men in work uniforms knocked repeatedly. They had keys that fit my locks perfectly. When they finally left, I found a new mirror mounted in my bathroom, reflecting my face with crystal clarity. That night I stood before it and raised my hand slowly. My reflection moved with me, perfectly synchronized, but I noticed something else. In the corner of the mirror, barely visible, was my own face watching from a different angle, as if I were standing behind myself. I've stopped looking directly at mirrors now, but sometimes in my peripheral vision I catch glimpses of movement that doesn't match my own. The notebook reappears and disappears, always containing new entries in my handwriting, always describing activities I don't remember performing. My neighbors have started avoiding eye contact in the hallways. The superintendent changes the subject whenever I try to discuss building security. My credit card statements continue showing purchases I don't recall making for tools and services I don't remember needing. The most disturbing part isn't the surveillance or the missing memories. It's the growing certainty that whoever is watching me knows exactly how I'll react to being watched. Every decision I make, every precaution I take, feels like I'm following a script written in my own handwriting. Sometimes I wonder if the person behind the mirror is the real me, and I'm just the reflection. Crime 6, it was sunny. I stepped outside and noticed something wrong. Everything cast shadows, trees, cars, buildings, except me. I stood still, moved around, even waved my arms. Nothing. I felt cold, not physically, but deep in my chest, like something essential had been taken. That night I checked old photos and videos. In none of them did I have a shadow, not even one. But what chilled me most was a picture taken in my bedroom mirror. There was a figure behind me, darker than black, matching my every move. The detective assigned to my case had tired eyes and coffee stains on his shirt. He listened to my story with the patience of someone who had heard stranger things. When I showed him the photograph, his expression changed. He held it closer to the light, squinting at the dark figure that seemed to hover just behind my reflection. "When was this taken?" he asked. I couldn't remember. The timestamp had been corrupted somehow, showing only static numbers that made no sense. But I knew it was recent because I recognized the sweater I was wearing, the blue one with the small tear near the left shoulder. The detective made a note and promised to look into it. That was the last I heard from him for weeks. I started carrying a small mirror everywhere, checking corners and reflections obsessively. The figure was always there, a presence that felt more real than my own reflection. Sometimes I caught myself talking to it, asking questions that received no answers except the unsettling way it seemed to tilt its head when I spoke. My neighbor, an elderly woman who lived alone with 3 cats, mentioned seeing me walking around my yard at night. She described someone who looked exactly like me, but moved differently, slower, more deliberate. When I told her I had been asleep during those incidents, she just nodded and offered me chamomile tea. The breakthrough came when I found the old security footage from the convenience store down the street. I had been there purchasing groceries, and the timestamp matched my receipt. But watching the grainy video, I saw something that made my hands shake. There were 2 figures at the register, one paying for groceries, one standing perfectly still behind the first. The cashier seemed to acknowledge both of us, even handing change to the motionless figure. I called the detective immediately, but the number had been disconnected. When I went to the station, they told me no one by that name worked there. They had no record of my case. The security footage disappeared the next day. The store manager claimed their system had been hacked, all recordings wiped clean. But I noticed how his hands trembled when he spoke, how he kept glancing at the corner where the camera used to be. I began documenting everything, every strange encounter, every person who seemed to see something I couldn't explain. My journal filled with testimonies from people who described conversations with me that I had never had, meetings at places I had never been. A barista remembered making my usual order while I stood in line twice, once behind myself. A taxi driver insisted on payment for 2 passengers after what I remembered as a solo ride. The pattern became clear only when I found the newspaper clipping hidden in my basement, tucked inside an old book I had never opened. The headline was simple: local resident found dead in apparent suicide. But the photo accompanying the article showed someone who looked exactly like me, down to the scar on my chin from a childhood accident. The article was dated 3 months ago. According to the story, this person had been found in their home, doors locked from the inside, no signs of struggle. The investigation had been closed quickly, ruled a suicide despite family protests. The family members interviewed all mentioned the same thing: how the deceased had been acting strangely in the weeks before their death, talking about feeling watched, claiming someone was following them. I read the article again and again, my reflection staring back at me from the basement window. But this time I was alone in the glass. The dark figure was nowhere to be seen. The next morning I received a call from someone who claimed to be the deceased person's sibling. They wanted to meet to discuss the similarities between our situations. When I asked how they had gotten my number, they said I had given it to them myself during a conversation I couldn't remember having. We met at a coffee shop I had never been to before, though the staff greeted me by name and knew my order. The sibling showed me photos of the deceased person's final days, pictures that could have been taken in my own home, showing furniture I recognized, clothes I owned, books I had read. They kept talking about their shadow being missing, the sibling said, stirring sugar into their coffee with mechanical precision. Said they felt like they were being replaced, one piece at a time. I excused myself to use the restroom, needing a moment to process what I was hearing. In the mirror above the sink, I saw myself clearly for the first time in weeks, alone. No dark figure, no secondary presence, just me, looking pale and tired, but undeniably real. When I returned to the table, the sibling was gone. The barista insisted I had been sitting alone the entire time, talking to myself in what she described as 2 different voices. The coffee cup across from me was clean, unused. I walked home through streets that felt familiar yet foreign, past neighbors who waved at me with recognition I couldn't return. My house key fit perfectly in a lock I was certain I had never seen before, opening a door to rooms arranged exactly as I remembered, but somehow different in ways I couldn't identify. The photograph from my bedroom mirror was still there, sitting on my nightstand. But now it showed only an empty room, no figure at all, not even my own reflection. Just an empty mirror in an empty space, as if the camera had captured nothing at all. I keep the photo close, a reminder of something I can't quite name. Sometimes I catch myself checking mirrors, looking for shadows that might or might not be there. The detective never existed, the convenience store footage was never real, and the newspaper clipping crumbles a little more each time I unfold it. But the questions remain, persistent as shadows at noon. In a world where nothing casts darkness, what happens to the parts of ourselves we can't see? And if someone else is living the life we think we're living, what does that make us? The answer might be simpler than I want to admit. Sometimes the most frightening truth is the one that's been staring back at us all along, waiting for us to stop looking away. Crime 7, I'd always wanted a home with a fireplace. This one had been bricked up long ago with no explanation from the realtor. Curiosity got the better of me, so I started chipping away at it. Behind the bricks was a small chamber, and in it a wooden box. Inside were ashes and dozens of teeth, human no doubt. Beneath the box was a nameplate, scratched out violently. I tried to reseal it, tried to pretend I never found it, but each night the hearth feels colder. And sometimes I hear whispering through the walls, asking if I've replaced what I took. The whispers started soft, like static between radio stations. I convinced myself it was the old pipes settling, the house adjusting to my presence. But the teeth, those perfect white molars and incisors, kept pulling me back to that sealed chamber. Each one felt smooth under my fingertips, polished clean of any flesh or memory. I began researching the house's history at the local records office. The previous owner had lived here for decades, a quiet man who kept to himself. Neighbors described him as helpful but distant, the kind of person who shoveled your driveway without being asked but never stayed for coffee afterward. He died alone, natural causes, they said. The house sat empty for months before I found it. The records showed something else, though. 3 missing person reports filed over the years, all involving people who'd been seen near this street. A door-to-door salesman who never returned to his car, a jogger whose route ended somewhere in this neighborhood, a utility worker who finished his rounds but never checked back in. All adults, all with perfect dental records that were never matched to any remains found. I started sleeping poorly. The weight of those teeth in that box felt heavier each passing night, as if they were growing more solid, more real. I'd sealed the chamber back up with fresh mortar, but my hands shook while I worked. The scratched nameplate haunted me. Someone had clawed at those letters with such violence that the metal was gouged deep. During the day, I functioned normally. Went to work, spoke to colleagues, maintained the illusion of a man settling into his new home. But my evenings belonged to the investigation. I mapped the missing person's last known locations, traced their paths, studied their photographs until their faces burned into my memory. The breakthrough came when I discovered the previous owner had been a dental technician before retirement. His garage still contained traces of his workshop, specialized tools for tooth extraction, bottles of cleaning solution, a small furnace that could reach temperatures high enough to cremate organic material. Everything was clean, methodical, professional. I interviewed the neighbors again, this time asking different questions. The elderly woman next door mentioned how helpful he'd been when her husband went missing during one of his evening walks, how he'd organized search parties, distributed flyers, even offered to help with funeral arrangements when they finally gave up hope. She still had his business card, dental services, house calls available. The pattern emerged slowly, like a photograph developing in chemical solution. He'd offered help to people in distress, provided services they needed, gained their trust. The missing jogger had complained to several people about tooth pain. The salesman's company records showed he'd been seeking emergency dental care. The utility worker had been scheduled for a root canal the week he disappeared. I found more boxes hidden throughout the house, behind false walls under floorboards sealed in the basement ceiling. Each contained the same contents, ashes and teeth, arranged with clinical precision. Some boxes had dates carved into their lids spanning nearly 20 years. Others contained personal effects, watches, rings, wallets with identification removed but everything else intact. The whispers grew louder as my investigation deepened. They weren't random sounds anymore. They formed words, pleas, accusations, names that matched the missing person's reports. Voices asking why they'd trusted him, why they'd followed him inside, why no one had looked for them here. I realized the nameplate I'd found wasn't for the victims. It belonged to him, the previous owner whose identity had been scratched away by fingernails desperate to leave some mark, some evidence of their final moments. He'd kept it as a trophy, a reminder of his power over those final victims. The police listened to my report with professional skepticism. Missing persons from years ago, circumstantial evidence, no concrete proof of murder. They took statements, filed paperwork, promised to investigate, but I knew they wouldn't find enough to satisfy the courts. He was dead, his victims were ash, and justice was as sealed as that fireplace had been. I moved out within the month, but I kept the boxes, not as trophies, as witnesses. Each set of teeth represents someone who trusted the wrong person, someone whose disappearance was explained away too easily. Their families deserve to know, even if the law can't provide closure. The new owners of the house seem happy. They've opened up the fireplace, installed a gas insert, gathered around it for family game nights. They don't know about the chamber I'd resealed one final time, or about the additional boxes I'd discovered and quietly removed. Sometimes I drive past and see the warm glow through their windows, children laughing around the hearth. But I still hear the whispers even in my new home. They follow me now, asking not for justice, but for remembrance. They want their names spoken, their stories told, their existence acknowledged. I've become their keeper, carrying the weight of their final moments, their trust betrayed, their voices silenced but not forgotten. The teeth sit in my closet now, in boxes I check every night before sleeping. I count them obsessively, making sure none have vanished, that no evidence has disappeared. Because somewhere out there, families are still wondering what happened to their loved ones, still hoping for answers that only these small, white fragments can provide. And sometimes, when the house is quiet and the world sleeps, I wonder if the whispers are warnings about something else entirely. If the man who lived in that house was just one link in a longer chain, if there are others still practicing their clinical compassion on the unsuspecting. If some patterns never truly end, they just move to new locations, find new willing helpers, seal new chambers. The fireplace was sealed for a reason. I just wish I'd understood that reason before I opened it. Crime8, my mail used to be junk, ads, bills, nothing unusual. Then one day I found an envelope marked "Do Not Ignore." Inside was a photo of my backyard taken from above. The next letter showed my bed unmade. The third one showed me sleeping. No sender, no return address, just one word on the back: soon. I reported it, installed cameras, even stopped checking the mail. But the envelopes kept appearing inside the house now. I never saw who left them. But the last one wasn't a photo. It was a map with only one place marked: my basement. I stared at that map for what felt like hours. The red X marked a corner I'd never examined closely. My basement was just storage, boxes of forgotten belongings, old furniture, the kind of space you avoid because it holds too many memories. But someone wanted me down there, someone who knew my house better than I did. The floorboards creaked under my weight as I descended. The air smelled different, metallic, like old pennies left in the rain. My fingers found the light switch, and the single bulb cast harsh shadows across the concrete walls. The marked corner looked ordinary. Stacked boxes, a broken mirror leaning against the wall, dust particles dancing in the weak light. I moved the boxes first. Underneath, the concrete looked new or different, smooth where the rest was rough. Someone had been here before me, had done work I never authorized. I pressed my palm against the surface. Cold, deliberate, professional. The neighbor's dog started barking. Through the small basement window, I could see her pacing her yard, agitated. She'd been acting strange lately, avoiding eye contact when I waved, hurrying inside when she saw me. I'd assumed it was nothing. People get busy, lives change. But now her behavior felt intentional, like she was afraid of something or someone. I found the loose section by accident. My foot caught on a slight depression, and when I knelt to examine it, the concrete shifted. Not much, just enough to reveal it wasn't solid. Beneath was a space, maybe 2 feet deep, lined with plastic sheeting. Inside that space was a metal box, the kind used for documents, fireproof, waterproof, built to last. The lock was already broken. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, all of me. Some taken through windows, others from across the street, but these weren't recent. The timestamps went back years. Someone had been watching me long before the letters started arriving. Someone patient, someone who knew how to wait. There were other things too, receipts from places I'd never been, copies of forms I'd never signed, a lease agreement for a storage unit I'd never rented. My signature was on everything, but I'd never seen these documents before. Someone had been living a parallel version of my life, making decisions, signing papers, all while I remained unaware. The final item was a journal, handwritten notes in my own handwriting, describing thoughts I'd never had, plans I'd never made, page after page of my thoughts, but not my thoughts. Someone had been inside my head, transcribing my inner voice, creating a record of conversations I'd never had with myself. The neighbor's dog had stopped barking. Through the window, I watched her walk to her fence, the one separating our properties. She stood there for a moment, then turned and looked directly at the basement window, at me. Her expression wasn't surprise or curiosity. It was recognition, like she'd been expecting this moment. I climbed the stairs and walked to my front door. She was already standing at hers, as if she'd been waiting. The space between our houses felt smaller than usual, like we were actors on a stage, playing roles we'd rehearsed but never discussed. "You found it," she said, not a question, a statement. "How long have you known?" "Since the beginning, since you moved in, since before you moved in." Her voice was calm, matter-of-fact, the voice of someone who'd been carrying a secret for so long it had become part of their daily routine. She invited me inside. Her house was identical to mine, same layout, same windows, same basement, but the walls were covered with photographs, not of me, of the previous owner. The man who'd lived in my house before me, the man whose life I'd apparently inherited along with the mortgage. According to the neighbor, he disappeared one night, leaving everything behind. No forwarding address, no explanation, just gone. But his life had continued somehow, documented in forms and photographs and journal entries, all signed with my name. "He never left," she said, pointing to a photograph of my basement. "He just moved downstairs, kept living his life through whoever came next, through you." The photographs on her walls told a different story than the one I'd been living. They showed the basement being modified, concrete being poured, spaces being created. They showed the previous owner working alone, preparing for something or someone. "The letters were his way of bringing you home," she continued. "He needed you to find what he'd left behind, to continue what he'd started." I wanted to ask what he'd started, but I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. The neighbor's house felt like a museum dedicated to someone who'd never really died, just transformed into something else, someone else. "The storage unit," I said, "the one I never rented." She nodded. "That's where he keeps the rest of it, the things that wouldn't fit in the basement, the things he's collected over the years." I left her house with more questions than answers. The storage unit was across town, but the key was in my pocket, the same key I'd carried for years, thinking it was for something else, something normal, something mine. The unit was filled with boxes labeled with my name. Inside were belongings I'd never owned, memories I'd never made, photo albums showing a life I'd never lived, but in every picture it was me, my face, my body, my smile, living experiences I'd never had. I drove home as the sun set, the boxes in my backseat feeling heavier than they should. The neighbor was in her yard again, watching. She waved and I waved back, but it felt like we were saying goodbye to something that had never really begun. The basement looked different now, empty, waiting. The concrete was smooth where I'd found the hidden space, but I could still feel the depression with my foot, still sense the presence of whatever had been stored there, whatever was meant to be stored there. I haven't received any more letters. The cameras show empty hallways and quiet rooms, but sometimes in the morning I find things moved slightly. A book opened to a page I didn't mark, a chair facing a direction I wouldn't choose. Small changes that could be explained away as forgetfulness or imagination. The neighbor moved away last month. New people live there now, but they keep their curtains closed and their dog inside. Sometimes I see them watching from their windows, but they look away when I wave. They know something I don't, or they know something I'm not ready to accept. The storage unit is still mine. I still have the key. Sometimes I drive by but never stop. The boxes are still in my house, unopened, waiting in the basement where they belong, where they've always belonged, where I'm beginning to understand they were meant to be found. But I'm not sure by whom. Crime 9, my bed is in the same place. I lock every door before I sleep, but more and more often I wake up in a different room, sometimes even outside. One night I woke up in my bathtub, another time curled inside the closet. I started setting up traps, string, cameras, locks. Nothing caught anyone, nothing triggered. Then I woke up once more, buried under the floorboards of the shed. A note taped to my chest read, "You keep leaving, but we always bring you back." The paper felt damp against my skin when I peeled it away. Cheap notebook paper, the kind you buy at any corner store. The handwriting looked familiar, but I couldn't place it. My fingers were dirty, soil packed under my nails like I'd been digging. The smell of earth clung to my clothes, my hair, even my mouth tasted of dust and decay. I started documenting everything. Every morning I'd photograph where I woke up, take notes about what I was wearing, check for injuries. The pattern made no sense. Sometimes I'd wake up wearing different clothes entirely. Sometimes my own clothes would be inside out or backwards or missing pieces. Once I woke up in the kitchen wearing a coat I'd thrown away months before. The cameras I installed showed nothing, just empty rooms, darkness, then suddenly I'd appear in frame already asleep in some impossible position. The footage looked seamless, like I'd always been there. No one entering, no one moving me. Just me unconscious in places I had no memory of going. I tried staying awake, coffee, pills, whatever it took, but sleep always came eventually, and with it the displacement. The longer I fought it, the stranger the locations became. I woke up in the neighbor's yard once, curled against their fence like a lost animal. They found me there in the morning, called the police. The officers were kind but confused. No signs of break-in, no evidence of foul play. Just a grown person sleeping in someone else's garden. The detective assigned to my case had tired eyes and calloused hands. She'd seen enough to know when something didn't add up, but also enough to know when to stop pushing. She asked about my medical history, my mental state, whether I was taking any medications. Standard questions with no satisfying answers. I started researching sleep disorders, dissociative conditions, anything that might explain what was happening. The internet offered theories but no solutions. Forums full of people with similar stories, but their experiences felt different somehow, less purposeful. My movements seemed deliberate, even if I couldn't remember making them. The note bothered me most. Someone had written it, placed it on my chest while I was unconscious underground. Someone knew where I was, had access to me in my most vulnerable state. But who, and why leave evidence of their presence? I began paying attention to details I'd previously ignored. The way my house key was sometimes placed differently on the nightstand. How my phone would be plugged in on the wrong side of the bed. Small things that suggested someone else had been there, handling my belongings while I slept elsewhere. The soil samples I collected from under my fingernails came back inconclusive. Common earth, the kind found in any backyard, but there were traces of something else mixed in. Concrete dust, old paint chips, fragments of fabric, like I'd been somewhere with construction, renovation, places where buildings were being torn down or built up. My sleep study revealed nothing abnormal. Brain waves normal, no signs of seizure activity, no indication of sleepwalking. The technician seemed puzzled by my case. People don't usually travel such distances while unconscious, she explained. The body has safeguards, natural limitations that prevent dangerous movement during sleep. I started leaving myself messages, recording voice memos before bed with details about my day, my mood, anything that might provide clues, but the recordings were useless. My voice sounded normal, calm even. No hint of distress or confusion. Just someone going through the motions of a bedtime routine, completely unaware of what would happen next. The breakthrough came when I found the second note. This one was in my own handwriting, tucked inside a book I hadn't opened in years. "Stop looking for them," it read. "They're already gone." My own words in my own hand, but I had no memory of writing them. I compared the handwriting to the first note, different styles but both familiar. Like two people I knew had written them, but I couldn't identify either one. The realization came slowly, like recognizing a face in an old photograph. The handwriting was mine, both notes, different versions of my own script, one more careful, one more hurried, but unmistakably from the same hand. The implications were staggering. I was leaving myself messages, warnings, communications from a version of myself I couldn't remember being. But about what? Who was already gone? What was I supposed to stop looking for? I began searching my house more thoroughly, looking for other messages, other signs of my unconscious activities. Hidden in drawers, taped under furniture, folded into the pages of books, I found dozens of notes in my own handwriting. Maps with locations circled, names I didn't recognize, dates that meant nothing to me. All in my hand, all foreign to my memory. One map showed a location across town, near the old industrial district, a warehouse complex that had been abandoned for years. I'd circled it repeatedly, drawn arrows pointing to specific buildings, written coordinates in the margins, but I'd never been there, at least not that I could remember. The drive took longer than expected. The streets in that part of town were poorly marked, many blocked by construction barriers or simply dead ends. When I finally found the warehouse complex, it looked exactly as I'd drawn it. Every detail matched my sketches, down to the broken window on the third building and the graffiti on the loading dock. Inside, the building smelled of rust and neglect, but there were signs of recent activity. Footprints in the dust, disturbances in the debris pattern. And in the basement, I found what I'd apparently been looking for without knowing it. A room set up like a makeshift living space. Sleeping bag, camping supplies, personal items scattered around, and photos, dozens of them, pinned to the walls like evidence in an investigation. They were surveillance photos of me, taken from a distance at different locations, different days. Me leaving my house, me at the grocery store, me sitting in my car, but also photos of me sleeping in all those strange places. Professional quality images that captured every detail of my unconscious relocations. At the bottom of a box, I found a journal. My handwriting again, but entries I didn't remember making. Detailed accounts of following someone, watching their routine, learning their habits. The someone was me. I had been stalking myself, documenting my own life like a case study. The final entry was different, rushed, almost frantic. "They know I know," it read. "Can't keep pretending to sleep through it. Have to stop before someone gets hurt. But how do you arrest yourself? How do you escape from your own mind?" The pieces were forming a picture I didn't want to see. The sleepwalking, the displacement, the notes and maps and photographs. I wasn't a victim of some unknown stalker. I was both the hunter and the hunted, the observer and the observed. My conscious mind had blocked out activities, my unconscious mind continued to perform. But the question remained, what had triggered this split? What trauma or secret was so significant that my mind had fractured to protect itself? And more disturbing still, if I was capable of this level of deception against myself, what other actions might I be forgetting? The warehouse felt different now, familiar in a way that made my skin crawl. I could picture myself setting up the surveillance equipment, developing the photographs, writing in the journal. But I could also feel the presence of someone watching, evaluating, deciding whether I'd learned enough to handle the truth. I left the warehouse with more questions than answers. The drive home felt longer, the streets more confusing. When I finally reached my house, everything looked normal from the outside, but I knew that normalcy was an illusion I'd been carefully maintaining. That night I didn't set any traps or cameras. Instead, I lay in bed waiting, hoping to catch the moment of transition between consciousness and whatever came after. But sleep, when it finally came, brought only darkness. I woke up in my own bed, fully clothed, car keys in my pocket. The warehouse photos were spread across my kitchen table, along with a new note in my own handwriting. Now you know what you're capable of. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Story 10. The aged envelope lay on the detective's desk, its corners tinged with a faded yellow hue, a stark contrast to the fresh stamp adorning it, a recent dispatch. With cautious hands, Detective Sarah Morgan unfolded the envelope, revealing a single sheet of paper bearing a message typed hurriedly in an uneven font. I am sorry for what I did. The paper exuded a faint dampness, carrying with it a metallic scent that lingered in the air. It was then that the detective's eyes fell upon a reddish smear along the bottom edge of the paper, a stark revelation that it was not mere ink staining the page. Handling the letter with precision, Detective Morgan enclosed it in an evidence bag, her gloved fingers ensuring no trace was overlooked. The forensic team's findings confirmed her suspicions the reddish stain was indeed human blood, a chilling match to the DNA recovered from an unsolved homicide case that had plagued the department for years. The victim, a young journalist named Rebecca Warren, had been discovered in her apartment, her life taken by multiple stab wounds. Her laptop was missing, her notes scattered, a grim testament to a story left unfinished. Despite countless interviews and exhaustive investigations, the case had grown cold, its answers eluding them. Yet a glimmer of hope emerged as a mysterious letter found its way to the homicide division, bearing a simple address. The limited fingerprints on the paper and envelope hinted at a meticulous sender, one who had taken care to conceal their identity. The postmark, however, offered a thread to follow, a rare light in months of darkness. Gathering her team in the dimly lit briefing room, Detective Morgan pinned the letter at the heart of the investigation board, lined with haunting crime scene images and fruitless leads. "This changes everything," she declared to the room. "Our perpetrator shows remorse." Detective James Chen, her steadfast partner in this enduring quest for justice, studied the letter intently. "Or perhaps it is a facade, a calculated ploy to deceive us," he countered. The forensics team's discovery of the typewriter's antiquated model, long out of production, added a new layer of complexity to the enigma. As the investigation gained traction, the detectives delved into Rebecca's life, uncovering her relentless pursuit of truth and justice. Her inquiries had led her to a wealthy family embroiled in a web of deceit and power struggles. The death of the family patriarch had sparked tensions, unveiling a sinister underbelly of greed and betrayal. Interviews with Rebecca's boyfriend, Michael Barnes, unveiled a subtle shift in his demeanor, hinting at buried secrets and unspoken truths. Rebecca feared she was being followed, he confessed, his voice tinged with regret. I should have taken her warnings seriously. Amidst the shadows of uncertainty, a second letter arrived, mirroring the first in its chilling contents. This time the message delved deeper into the darkness. She had uncovered the family's secrets, the truth about the inheritance, the fate of the old man. I never intended for it to escalate. The trail led the detectives to the grand mansion of the deceased patriarch, where suspicions grew around the eldest son, Richard. His collection of vintage typewriters raised eyebrows, his demeanor veiled in practiced composure. The breakthrough came with the revelation of microscopic fibers on the envelopes, linking back to custom stationery owned by the youngest daughter, Eleanor. A search of Richard's estate unearthed a hidden chamber, a lair of incriminating evidence clippings, surveillance, and a vintage typewriter that echoed the letter's haunting words. The blood analysis sealed the connection to Rebecca, unraveling a tangled web of deceit and betrayal. Yet the most startling revelation came with the discovery of financial transactions between Richard and Michael, shedding light on a sinister pact that led to Rebecca's untimely demise. Confronted with the damning evidence, Michael's facade crumbled, his confession laying bare the truth behind the tragedy. Eleanor's clandestine recording served as the final nail in the coffin, capturing the damning conversation that sealed Richard's fate. As justice prevailed and the courtroom echoed with the weight of truth, Detective Morgan approached Rebecca's grieving parents, offering solace in the form of closure. The blood-stained letters, now relics of a dark chapter, stood as a silent testament to the unraveling of a meticulously planned crime. The tale of Rebecca Warren became a cautionary beacon in the realm of detective lore, a reminder that even the most shrouded secrets bear witness to the light of justice, illuminating the path to redemption and closure. Story 11. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, a mysterious key arrived in the mail for Sarah Miller, wrapped in a plain envelope with no return address. The worn brass key seemed out of place, yet strangely familiar to her. Despite trying it in every lock she owned, the key refused to turn. Perplexed, Sarah placed it on her coffee table, only to hear the old grandfather clock in the hallway let out a single, hollow chime despite being broken for years. Reporting the strange occurrence to the authorities, Sarah's concerns were initially dismissed as a simple mishap, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Reluctantly, the responding officer took the key as evidence, unaware of the unsettling chain of events it would set in motion. Detective Robert Harmon, a seasoned investigator with a knack for unraveling complex cases, received the file the next morning. The brass key sat on his desk, its unassuming appearance belying the darkness it held within. Background checks on Sarah revealed no red flags, just an ordinary retired teacher with a quiet life. Forensic analysis yielded no fingerprints on the key except for Sarah's. The envelope provided no clues, just a generic postmark. But when Harmon ran the key's unique pattern through the department database, a chilling connection emerged, a cold case from years ago tied to a storage unit with disturbing contents. The key led to Harold Jenkins, a former neighbor of Sarah's with a hidden past. As the investigation unfolded, a grim picture emerged of a man who had meticulously planned and executed heinous crimes, his true nature concealed behind a facade of normalcy. The search for Jenkins intensified, uncovering a trail of horror that spanned years. The discovery of a hidden room filled with engraved keys pointed to a string of victims unknown to authorities. The community shuddered as the manhunt for Jenkins reached a fever pitch, his moniker, the Keymaster, striking fear into the hearts of all. As the search closed in on Jenkins, a final confrontation ensued in the wilderness. In a tragic end, Jenkins took his own life, leaving behind a journal detailing his twisted motives and a chilling message for Sarah, a haunting reminder of the darkness that had touched her life. The investigation revealed the extent of Jenkins' atrocities, bringing closure to families but leaving a scar on the community. Sarah, unable to return to her home, grappled with the knowledge of how close she had come to unimaginable evil. The case remains a haunting example of how predators can lurk among us, hidden in plain sight. And as researchers delve into Jenkins' writings for insights, a collection of brass keys serves as a silent testament to the lives lost and the darkness that can lie behind a seemingly ordinary faux death. Story 12. The old house, shrouded in whispers and shadows, sat silent and untouched for years. Stories lingered among the neighbors, tales of a young woman who had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a lingering mystery that tainted the air within those desolate walls. When the new tenants crossed the threshold, they were met with a peculiar discovery: the bedroom door stubbornly locked from the inside, guarding its secrets with an eerie determination. With a creak and a groan, they forced their way in, revealing a scene frozen in time. The air hung heavy with the weight of neglect, dust dancing in the dim light like forgotten memories. The room, pristine yet unsettling, offered a glimpse into the past. The bed impeccably made, the mirror free of blemishes, and a solitary candle, now a mere puddle of wax, stood as a silent witness to the passage of time. But it was the notebook, its pages whispering untold truths, that beckoned them closer. Detective Morgan, a shadow in the dimness, delved into the notebook's secrets as forensic experts combed the room for elusive fingerprints. The elegant script belonged to Elise Winters, a name etched in the annals of a chilling mystery that had haunted the neighborhood for too long. Elise's words, penned with a sense of urgency, painted a portrait of fear and impending danger. The final entry, a haunting echo of her turmoil, spoke of unseen eyes and a lurking presence that filled her nights with dread. The truth she sought to reveal lay within those ink-stained pages, a cryptic message from beyond the veil of the unknown. As the investigation unfolded, a web of deceit and betrayal unfurled, casting a pall over Elise's legacy. Her meticulous nature, her unwavering pursuit of justice, had led her down a treacherous path lined with shadows and secrets too dark to fathom. The room, a silent witness to her struggle, held tight to its enigmatic allure. Each corner, each surface, bore the weight of a hidden truth waiting to be unearthed. And when the investigators uncovered a hidden compartment, a Pandora's box of damning evidence emerged, shedding light on a conspiracy that ran deeper than anyone had dared to imagine. The revelations, like ripples in a still pond, spread far and wide, exposing the tendrils of corruption that had ensnared Elise in her quest for truth. The darkness that had cloaked her disappearance began to dissipate, revealing a path fraught with danger and deceit. In the end, justice prevailed, though bittersweet and stained with blood. The perpetrators, their masks of innocence shattered, faced the reckoning of their sins. Elise's voice, a whisper in the night, echoed through the halls of power, a reminder that even in death her spirit could not be silenced. And so the house stood empty once more, a silent sentinel to the mysteries that lay buried within its walls. The whispers of the past lingered, a spectral presence that dared not be forgotten. In the quiet of the night, a faint light flickered in the window, a beacon of justice for a soul lost but not forsaken. As darkness descended, casting a veil over the world, the house stood as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. And in that hallowed space, Elise's legacy lived on, a testament to the enduring power of truth and the indomitable strength of those who dared to seek it. Story 13, The Tale of the Whispering Manor. The new owners brushed off the crackling intercom as an oddity, a quirk of the old Victorian manor they now called home. The ancient system, once forgotten, now crackled to life in the dead of night. Curiosity finally got the best of the husband one evening, prompting him to press the button. A whisper, barely audible, hissed through the speaker. "Why did you come back?" Startled, he recoiled, hands trembling. His wife, watching from behind, denied ever uttering those words. Nestled amidst ancient oak trees, the Victorian manor exuded an air of mystery, its exterior weathered yet concealing a modern interior. Daniel and Meredith Parker, the new owners, had been drawn to the property by its history and unique features, like the vintage intercom system that connected all rooms. Detective Sarah Reeves arrived at the manor in response to a call about a possible break-in. However, there was an unspoken depth to the situation, hinted at by the dispatcher's tone. Daniel, pale and uneasy, met the detective at the door and led her inside, recounting the strange occurrences with the intercom that had plagued them. In the dimly lit living room, Meredith sat rigid on an antique sofa, her hands gripping a cup of untouched tea. Without preamble, she revealed a startling discovery hidden behind a wall. As Daniel began to expand the kitchen pantry, they found a small leather-bound journal wrapped in deteriorating plastic. The journal, penned by a woman named Alina, chronicled her fear of her husband Vincent and her suspicion of his intentions. Further investigation revealed that Vincent and Alina Blackwood had once owned the house. Records indicated Vincent had sold the property after Alina's disappearance, under mysterious circumstances with no official divorce or trace of her whereabouts. A team uncovered anomalies beneath the garden shed, leading to the discovery of human remains, a woman in her 40s, bearing signs of violence. Vincent Blackwood, now elderly and residing in a care facility, confessed to the murder of Alina. He spoke calmly of silencing her constant voice through the intercom, spinning a web of deception to make it seem like she had left him willingly. The trial exposed his carefully constructed facade, resulting in a guilty plea and a swift sentencing. Daniel and Meredith, unable to bear the weight of the house's dark past, sold the property, holding a memorial for Alina in the restored garden before departing. The intercom system, a relic of the past, was removed by the new owners during renovations, though whispers and static lingered during its dismantling. Detective Reeves revisited the case file, pondering the manor's eerie ability to unveil the truth across time. The house, dubbed the house that answered back by local law enforcement, seemed to echo with the whispers of the past. As she drove by the property, the detective would slow down, listening for echoes of a story long buried but never forgotten. Story 14, The old chest lay hidden beneath layers of forgotten belongings in the attic, a silent witness to the passage of time within the house's walls. Among the dusty relics stored inside were faded snapshots, capturing moments of joy and celebration from years gone by. Each photograph told a story of ordinary lives, of families coming together in laughter and love. But one picture stood out from the rest, shrouded in an unsettling mystery that lingered like a whisper in the still air. In the dim light of the attic, Rebecca uncovered the final photo, her eyes drawn to the scene frozen in time. It depicted a family seated in her own living room, the familiar couch, the familiar curtains, yet they were strangers to her. And there, lurking in the shadows of the hallway, a figure stood watching, his presence ominous and foreboding. A chill crept up Rebecca's spine as she studied the image, her fingers trembling ever so slightly as she held the Polaroid. The family in the photograph, a woman with honey blonde hair, a man with thick-rimmed glasses, and two children, smiled brightly at the camera, unaware of the sinister figure looming behind them. In that captured moment of happiness, danger lurked just beyond their sight. Descending the creaking wooden stairs, Rebecca carried the photo down to the kitchen, where harsh fluorescent light illuminated the uncanny resemblance between her home and the unknown families. The archway, the crown molding, the bay window all mirrored her own surroundings, yet the faces in the picture remained unfamiliar, a puzzle waiting to be solved. Enter Detective Morgan, a seasoned investigator with eyes that missed nothing, his weathered leather jacket a testament to years of unraveling mysteries. With a methodical gaze, he examined the photograph, his gloved hand tracing the edges before turning it over to reveal a blank back. As the investigation unfolded, a trail of past occupants emerged, each family preceding the next in a haunting pattern of disappearance. The Sutherlands, the last known residents captured in the Polaroid, had vanished without a trace, leaving behind unanswered questions and a house cloaked in shadows. Forensic analysis dated the photograph to a bygone era, revealing eerie details that hinted at a staged composition. The figure in the hallway remained a spectral enigma, his presence a silent specter haunting the house's history. Delving deeper into the past, Detective Morgan uncovered a dark legacy tied to the house's origins. The mysterious architect, Samuel Whitfield, whose unfinished tale was woven into the very foundation of the house, his presence lingering like a ghostly echo. Beneath the cold concrete of the basement, a grim discovery awaited the missing families, preserved in an eternal slumber, their fates sealed within the depths of the earth. Among their belongings lay a camera, a sinister tool capturing the innocence of unknowing subjects, forever immortalized in a web of secrets. As Rebecca sought refuge under police protection, a chilling revelation surfaced: the existence of a hidden crawlspace in the attic, a clandestine chamber where the watcher had observed his unsuspecting prey. The journal found within spoke of a sinister purpose, a malevolent force fixated on those who dared to uncover the truth. In the dead of night, a phantom call pierced the silence, the mechanical click of a Polaroid camera signaling a presence unseen, a threat looming in the darkness. The investigation continued, the house standing as a silent sentinel to the horrors that lay buried within its walls. And so the mystery endured, a tale of lost souls and unseen watchers, of a house that held secrets darker than the night itself. Samuel Whitfield's legacy remained a haunting enigma, his whereabouts unknown, his sinister gaze forever etched in the shadows of time. As new families moved in, unaware of the lurking danger, the cycle repeated, a dark dance of deception and disappearance playing out in the hallowed halls of the house. And somewhere in the shadows, the watcher bided his time, his malevolent gaze fixed on those who dared to seek the truth. Story 15: The Mystery of the Whispering House. She desired to refresh the nursery before the little one's arrival. The walls wore a faded blue, holding silent tales within their worn layers. As she applied the initial coat of white paint, something emerged from beneath the faint outline of letters, gradually sharpening into legibility, a message hidden beneath the surface. Don't let it hear you. Her breath hitched. Stepping back, she noticed something peculiar, tiny handprints in the fresh paint, too high for any child to reach. This discovery in the nursery of the Morgan residence marked the start of what investigators would later term the Whispering House case. The young couple had acquired the Victorian-style home just months prior for a suspiciously low price. The realtor had mentioned only minor cosmetic issues, omitting any mention of the property's ominous history. Detective Sarah Klein arrived, notebook in hand, and pressed the doorbell. A woman answered, her pregnant belly protruding beneath paint-splattered overalls. Dark circles framed her eyes, evidence of sleepless nights. The detective observed the woman's trembling hands as she recounted finding the hidden message and handprints. The previous owners vanished suddenly, the woman disclosed. Neighbors said they departed in the dead of night, no moving truck, just essentials packed in their car. Walking through the historic home, Detective Klein's steps echoed on aged floorboards. In the nursery, she scrutinized the partially painted wall. The message lingered where the paint job had been abruptly halted. Beside it, 5 small handprints imprinted in the wet paint at an adult's shoulder height. Back at the precinct, Detective Klein delved into the property records. The house had changed ownership 8 times in 30 years, an unusually high turnover rate. Each family stayed less than 2 years. More unsettling were the child welfare reports filed for 3 of those families. Children spoke of whispers from the walls and someone watching them sleep. The detective delved further, examining construction records and historical archives. The house had once belonged to Eleanor Blackwood, a wealthy widow who operated a small orphanage on the premises during the early industrial era. Newspaper clippings detailed the disappearance of 5 children under her care. Authorities presumed they had run away, a common occurrence for orphans at the time. When Eleanor passed, workers renovating the house discovered a secret room behind the nursery wall. Inside lay children's belongings, tiny shoes, toys, and clothing, but no remains. Detective Klein interviewed former residents, connecting the dots to a chilling pattern. Each family with children reported strange incidents. Toys moved during the night, childlike laughter echoing in empty hallways, and crayon drawings appearing. Most dismissed these occurrences as imagination until the writing surfaced during repainting. The message varied slightly: don't let them find you, don't make a sound, don't let it hear you. Always the same handwriting, always unveiled during nursery renovations. A forensic linguist analyzed the writing, linking it to Eleanor Blackwood's journals. More disturbing were the identical handprints across decades, different children yet the same size and placement. The investigation took a grim turn when the detective persuaded the current owners to allow ground-penetrating radar in the basement. The technician noted anomalies, 5 child-sized shapes beneath the concrete floor. Breaking through, they uncovered a grim truth. 5 sets of remains arranged in a circle, dating back to Eleanor's time. Forensic analysis confirmed the children died under Eleanor's ownership. Each child wore a pendant engraved with their name, the 5 orphans who had allegedly run away. Luminol sprayed in the nursery revealed glowing handprints on every wall, beneath layers of paint unseen to the naked eye. Countless handprints, as if the children had tried to escape their fate. Eleanor's journals, retrieved from county archives, exposed her twisted beliefs. She thought orphaned children possessed special energy, intending to use it to prolong her life. The children had etched warnings into the wall, hoping future residents would uncover their story. The case closed with a proper burial for the victims, marking them not as runaways but as murder victims. The house remained deserted, the pregnant couple refusing to return even for their belongings. Detective Klein filed her final report, documenting the luminol handprints and hidden message. While justice was served, an unexplainable presence lingered in the house, reaching out through layers of paint and time. The nursery walls were demolished, but workers reported hearing children's whispers within the wreckage, refusing to return. The house was condemned, a cold case left unsolved, a reminder that some crimes leave indelible marks beyond the reach of fresh paint. Detective Klein kept a photograph from the case, a haunting image of 5 luminol handprints glowing in the darkness, a spectral reminder of the mysteries that dwell within the whispering house. Story 16. The inn was modest, a relic from another era where guests passed through like shadows in the night. The receptionist handed her the key with a cryptic warning. "Just remember, avoid the final door on the left," he whispered, his eyes betraying a hint of unease. Intrigue tugged at her curiosity. That evening, navigating the dim corridor, she hesitated in front of it. The brass handle chilled her fingertips. The door appeared unremarkable until she pressed her ear to it. From the other side, a faint breath whispered. Detective Morgan Reed yawned, exhaustion clinging to her as she stooped beneath the yellow tape sealing off the room. The odor assaulted her senses, first a tang of metal and decay, all too familiar. Blood had seeped into the threadbare carpet, staining it a deep, murky hue. The scene was a juxtaposition, a pristine bathroom, an undisturbed bed, and the ghastly sight between them. A young woman lay sprawled on the floor, golden locks splayed like a halo. Her vacant gaze fixed on the ceiling, frozen in a silent scream. Reed knelt beside the victim, mindful not to disrupt the evidence markers scattered around. "Third one this year," remarked the forensic expert, his tone devoid of emotion as he captured the scene with his camera. "Same modus operandi," Reed nodded solemnly. The victim was elegantly dressed, out of place in this forgotten inn. A designer purse lay open on the bedside table, its contents untouched. This was not about theft. There was a different motive driving this sinister act. The innkeeper lingered anxiously by the entrance, his complexion pallid. "She checked in alone, paid in cash. I never imagined," his voice faltered. "The chambermaid discovered her during cleaning." Reed surveyed the room once more. No signs of forced entry, no defensive wounds on the victim. She either admitted her assailant willingly or knew them beforehand. Back at the precinct, Reed pinned up photographs on the board. 3 women, strikingly similar, all found in rundown motels off the beaten path. Speculations of a serial offender swirled. "The autopsy results are in," informed Detective Hayes, dropping a file on Reed's desk. "Death by manual strangulation. No DNA under the victim's nails. No evidence of sexual assault." Reed furrowed her brow. This was personal, not just a random act of violence. Days melded into nights as the investigation deepened. Surveillance footage from the inn revealed nothing suspicious. The victim, identified as Elaine Werner, was a meticulous financial analyst with no known adversaries. Her acquaintances described her as cautious, detail-oriented. Staying at such a place was out of character for her. A breakthrough came during Reed's interview with Werner's sister. She mentioned a man from her workplace, the sister disclosed, hands trembling around her cup. "Someone complicated. I think he was married," Reed leaned in. "Did she mention a name?" "She called him C, that's all she said." The focus shifted to Werner's office. Colleagues depicted her as professional, private. None were aware of any relationship. Yet a business card tucked in her desk calendar led Reed to Charles Emerson, Senior Vice President. Emerson maintained a composed facade during questioning, concerned, cooperative, keeping a safe distance. His alibi seemed airtight, dining with his wife and another couple, but a flicker in his eyes unsettled Reed. "Did you know Elaine Werner outside of work?" she inquired casually. A momentary shift in Emerson's demeanor did not escape her notice, only professionally. Later that week, partial fingerprints from Werner's purse matched Emerson's. When confronted, his calm demeanor shattered. "We were involved," he admitted, "but it was over. She threatened to expose me to my wife." "Was that enough to end her life?" Reed pressed. Emerson's gaze hardened. "I never set foot in that inn." However, records revealed otherwise. A credit card transaction for the adjacent room paid with a corporate card tied to Emerson's company. A search of that room unveiled a concealed camera in the shared wall vent, evidence mounted against him. Fibers from Emerson's suit matched those on Werner's body. His DNA was present on a water glass in her room. Further scrutiny of his home computer exposed recordings of the previous victims. The pattern emerged. Emerson targeted women resembling his wife in her youth. He lured them to specific inns, always selecting the room next to the final door on the left, equipped with surveillance gear. After recording their encounters, he returned to erase the evidence, the women themselves. In the interrogation chamber, Emerson's facade finally crumbled. "They threatened everything," he muttered. "My reputation, my marriage, my life." The trial was swift but riveting. 3 families witnessed justice unfold in the sterile courtroom. Emerson displayed no remorse, maintaining the stoic mask that had served him in the corporate realm. The judge sentenced him to life imprisonment without parole. As he was escorted away, Reed caught his gaze. For an instant, she glimpsed not humanity, but its absence, a void where empathy should dwell. Dubbed the last door on the left case, psychologists delved into Emerson's psyche. Enthusiasts dissected every detail, but for Reed the case never truly concluded. Sometimes, wandering down in corridors, she found herself counting doors, pondering the enigmas that might lurk behind them. In the evidence vault, 3 identical keys are sealed away, reminders that some portals, once unlocked, can never be sealed shut. Story 17. Aged Polaroid held a forgotten tale, a snapshot frozen in time from a birthday lost to memory. In the picture, joyous faces smiled, candles danced with flickering flames, a scene of ordinary merriment. However, when the daughter inherited the box of antiquated photos, she noticed it. A mysterious presence lingered in the background, just behind the gathered group. A man, cloaked in shadows, stood on the fringes of the candlelight's glow. He was not part of the family, his existence a puzzle to all. Yet in each photo he drew nearer. Sarah Winters stumbled upon the collection while clearing out her mother's attic post-funeral. Within a cardboard box labeled Memories, she found a treasure trove of faded photographs capturing family gatherings from her youth. Initially expected to bring solace, the discovery instead marked the inception of a chilling revelation. In the initial photo, he was barely discernible, a mere silhouette on the periphery during her 7th birthday celebration. The enigmatic figure lingered near the glass door, features obscured, a silent observer. Subsequent snapshots revealed his gradual advancement. By the 3rd photo, he loomed behind her uncle, unnoticed by the subjects within the frames. Trembling, Sarah phoned her father, seeking answers about the unknown man haunting the pictures. "Dad, who is this stranger in the background of these photos?" His response was a pregnant silence, followed by a sharp intake of breath. "What man? There should be no one but family." Digital copies of the Polaroids were swiftly dispatched to her father, prompting an immediate call back. His voice trembled with unease. "This cannot be. We would have noticed an outsider." Detective Marcus Reed attentively listened as Sarah laid out the photos across his desk at the precinct. Rain tapped against the windows, casting dancing shadows upon the evidence. Methodically, the detective's weathered hands traversed from one photo to the next, his gaze narrowing. "And no one recognized this individual?" he inquired, his voice a blend of neutrality and intrigue. "No one," Sarah affirmed, organizing the photos in chronological order. Leaning in, the detective observed the progression that had initially seemed paranoid but now materialized before him. The mysterious figure navigated purposefully through the party in each photo, edging closer to the children. In the final image, he loomed directly behind Sarah's youthful form, a ghostly hand extending towards her shoulder, just beyond the frame. The photographer, Reed suggested, skepticism lacing his tone. My mother took all these. She set the timer and entered the frame, Sarah clarified. Copies were made, a case file opened. In a matter of days, every living attendee of the party was contacted. None recalled the man's presence. No external visitors, no hired help, just an isolated countryside rental chosen for its seclusion. Facial recognition software faltered. The figure remained shrouded strategically in each photo, as if cognizant of the camera's lens. Yet there was a practiced, deliberate air to his posture. The investigation would have reached an impasse if not for Sarah's discovery of additional photos in other family albums. Diverse gatherings, disparate years, yet the same shadowy figure, perpetually lurking unnoticed in the background. A tech specialist enhanced the images, unveiling obscured details under the harsh glow of digital scrutiny. A scar on the wrist, a distinctive ring, a partial reflection revealing facial features previously masked by shadow. The breakthrough came from dental records. The teeth visible in one enhanced image matched those of Robert Keller, a maintenance worker linked to vanished children and long-cold abduction cases in the region. Keller had worked for the company responsible for cleaning the vacation property where Sarah's birthday had unfolded. Possessing master keys to numerous rental properties, he had easy access to spaces where families congregated, spaces where children mysteriously disappeared. Beneath the concrete foundations of Keller's former abode, authorities unearthed poignant relics, a hair clip akin to one worn by a missing girl, a toy car belonging to a vanished boy, a bracelet Sarah recognized as her own, thought lost in her youth. Alone in her apartment, surrounded by the unraveling of decades-old horrors encapsulated in the photos, Sarah received a call from the detective. Remains found near one of the vacation properties had been identified through DNA, confirming the fate of one of the missing children. As she gazed at the final birthday photo, her family frozen in jubilation by the warm candlelight, the figure lingered behind her younger self, a silent sentinel concealed by shadows but undeniably present. The revelation intertwined unsolved mysteries across generations. Families found closure, though not the solace they had hoped for. The enigmatic figure in the family photos had stepped from the shadows into the realm of justice, his long-concealed presence finally acknowledged after years of obscurity. Sarah collected the photos, returning them to the box as evidence, a testament to the unseen threats captured on film, transient specters weaving through celebrations unnoticed, leaving naught but a whisper of their passage through time's frozen tableau. Story 18. The town whispered in hushed tones about the house nestled at the timber's edge, where the trees stood sentinel and the shadows danced with secrets. It loomed solitary, its windows veiled in darkness, its weary porch bearing the weight of forgotten years. No one laid claim to its ownership. No memory lingered of the hands that first shaped it. Yet when a band of wanderers strayed too near, they beheld a peculiar sight, names etched into the wooden walls, carved deep like cryptic omens. And at the base of the list, fresh and untouched, a name unknown to all but one among them. A shiver passed through the group as one voice quivered, "That name is mine." In the dead of night, a call pierced the silence, the dispatcher logging it as a routine trespassing incident. The caller, Mason Wright, lead hiker, spoke of his startling discovery, the sight of his own name etched into the abandoned dwelling. Responding officers anticipated mere mischief, the handiwork of reckless youth or a jest gone awry. But what awaited them defied logic. Under the cloak of night, Detective Sarah Keller arrived, her flashlight cutting through the darkness, casting an ethereal glow upon the aged fade. The names 27 in total etched vertically along the eastern wall. Some faded into obscurity, their stories lost to time. Others remained sharp as if freshly carved, and at the end Mason Wright, the incision still fragrant with sawdust. "I've never set foot here before," Mason professed, his words mingling with the frosty air. "How could my name be known to this place?" The inquiry commenced with investigations into each name inscribed. The findings sent a chill through the detective team. Each name belonged to a soul vanished over the span of 4 decades, lost to the wilderness. Some cases had grown cold, while others remained open. All united by a sinister thread, the individuals had disappeared while trekking alone. Forensic experts meticulously cataloged each carving, noting the depths, the techniques, the aging imprints. The eldest name, Rebecca Hansen, tied to a missing persons dossier from 37 years past, a tale of a young woman swallowed by the forest, never to return. Detective Keller delved deep into Mason's narrative. His account remained unwavering, devoid of ties to the area beyond that fateful hike with his college companions, a venture chosen at random, spurred by an online suggestion. No link surfaced between him and the other names adorning the eerie abode. Attention shifted to Mason's comrades. Emily Chen, the group's photographer, presented snapshots from their journey. Upon scrutiny, analysts unearthed a disquieting presence, a blurred figure looming in the backdrop of 3 images. A spectral form, tall and slender, veiled by the foliage. "We encountered no one else along the trail," Emily attested. "We would have remembered." Detective Keller sanctioned a search of the house's interior. Within the desolate walls, a grim tableau awaited the possessions of the missing hikers, meticulously arranged on wooden shelves in the basement. Watches, backpacks, cameras, wallets, each bearing a name corresponding to those outside. Technicians meticulously documented the trove, unveiling bloodstains beneath UV light, a macabre testament to efforts to erase the past. Despite the absence of bodies beneath the dwelling, cadaver dogs signaled fervently at the forest's edge, where the trees held silent vigil. As the probe escalated, Mason's demeanor grew erratic. Whispers haunted his nights, phantom footprints trailed to his doorstep, unseen eyes stalked from the shadows. Protective custody was assigned, yet paranoia gripped him, tightening its tendrils. A breakthrough emerged as forgotten records surfaced from county archives, unearthing the house's elusive owner, Victor Blackwood, a recluse of the woods. Rarely seen, described as a towering, gaunt figure who shunned society. 15 years gone without a trace, his vanishing a mystery unsolved. Armed with a warrant, Detective Keller delved deeper into the forest's heart. The search party unearthed a network of crude blinds scattered along favored paths, each a sinister vantage point. Within one lay a journal, a chronicle of observations of prey, of patterns, of a hunter's meticulous craft. The entries darkened with time, progressing from beasts to humans, detailing the stalking of each victim on the wall, the methodical selection of souls. A manhunt ensued, spanning jurisdictions, as helicopters scoured the canopy with thermal eyes. Tactical teams combed every crevice, yet the elusive figure of Victor Blackwood remained a phantom. Mason's whereabouts grew unknown, his apartment deserted, a chilling message etched upon his wall. Weeks passed in futile pursuit until a grisly revelation unfolded within Blackwood's house, a hidden workshop, tools gleaming, a fresh carving awaiting its place among the names. A name familiar to Detective Keller, the lead technician, vanished without a trace, his fate entwined with the dwelling's malevolent legacy. Surveillance cloaked the house, vigilant eyes watching, waiting. 3 nights on, sensors stirred, capturing the approach of a spectral form, tall, sinewy, a specter of the forest. Tactical units closed in, only for the cameras to falter, the figure melting into the night. The vigil persisted, the names on the wall echoing through the ages, a chilling testament to the unknown. To this day, the house endures under watchful gaze, a relic of dread and mystery. Mason Wright and the technician linger in the realm of the vanished, their fates entwined with the forest's haunting whispers. The investigation presses on, as new vanishings echo through wooded realms, as officers whisper the names that dare not be spoken. And the house stands, a grim reminder of the names no one dares to utter. Story 19. The apartment lay dormant for months, a silent witness to the passage of time. When the new occupants arrived, their expectations were low, perhaps a layer of dust, a few forgotten remnants of the past. Yet one door remained steadfastly closed, its secrets hidden behind an impenetrable barrier. It was a closet, stubbornly locked from within, guarding its mysteries with quiet determination. The landlord, with a hesitant hand, finally forced the door ajar. Anticipation hung heavy in the air, mingling with a sense of foreboding. What lay beyond was not what they had anticipated. The walls bore witness to a silent struggle, etched with deep, uneven scratches that spoke of desperation and confinement. And in the shadows, a relic of the past beckoned, an ancient flip phone, its screen aglow with a single, unread message. Detective Morgan Shaw, with her keen eye for the enigmatic, felt a shiver run down her spine at the sight. It wasn't the obvious signs of violence that unsettled her, but the silent echoes of a trapped soul. Forensics now, she commanded her partner, Officer Reed, who diligently captured the haunting marks on camera, and fetch me the records of the previous tenants. The message on the phone held a cryptic message. I know what you did. The landlord, a figure of nervous anxiety, recounted the departure of the previous tenant, Emma Caldwell, a quiet young woman who had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of unpaid rent and unanswered questions. Forensics uncovered a chilling revelation within the scratches on the walls, traces of blood, most belonging to Emma, but 2 samples stood out. One remained a mystery, while the other defied logic, belonging to a man long presumed dead. Shaw's brow furrowed in confusion as she pored over the perplexing findings, a sense of unease settling in her mind. Emma's life, frozen in time within the confines of her apartment, told a tale of interrupted existence. Clues scattered like fallen leaves, unanswered calls, a mysterious boyfriend, and a sudden cessation of contact with her sister. The pieces of the puzzle began to form a sinister picture, painted in shades of secrecy and betrayal. As the investigation deepened, a sinister thread unraveled, connecting Emma to another missing woman, Lynette Porter. Shaw's intuition led her down a twisted path, tracing the shadowy figure of Derek Mercer, a man who had long evaded justice by faking his own demise. Behind the heavy doors of a secluded property, a grim discovery awaited the missing Lynette Porter, a mere shell of her former self, held captive in a macabre echo of Emma's imprisonment. Mercer's dark obsession with control and suffering unfurled like a poisonous flower, revealing a mind twisted by malevolent desires. The manhunt for Mercer spanned across boundaries, a race against time to stop a predator in his tracks. The chilling truth emerged during interrogation, a man devoid of remorse, driven by a twisted sense of justice known only to himself. The trial laid bare the intricate web of deceit woven by Mercer, a master manipulator who reveled in the torment of his victims. Emma's fate remained a haunting mystery, her final act of defiance immortalized in a text message that bore witness to her unending struggle against darkness. As justice was served, Mercer's facade of calm shattered, revealing the darkness that lurked beneath. The survivors stood tall, bathed in the light of truth, their voices ringing out in defiance against the shadows that sought to engulf them. And so Detective Shaw's office bore witness to a silent testament, a reminder that in the quietest corners, the echoes of a harrowing struggle could linger, a poignant reminder of the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unspeakable darkness. Story 20. Renovations always bring to light the unexpected, old relics from the past, hidden treasures, fading memories. In the midst of Sarah and Michael's restoration project, a peculiar discovery awaited them beneath the worn floorboards of their Victorian-era home. Nestled carefully within the wood's embrace was a letter, its edges worn and its words aged by time. The cryptic message etched on the brittle paper sent shivers down their spines. Don't trust the one who knocked. Before they could decipher its meaning, the eerie echo of 3 sharp raps reverberated through the silent house, unnerving the couple to their core. The allure of the old house had drawn them in an estate auction fined with intricate details and a rich past. Little did they know that their endeavor to breathe new life into the aged walls would unearth a haunting secret. Detective Alina Reed, with her seasoned partner, arrived to investigate the unsettling revelation. The exposed floorboards revealed a hidden chamber below, where the note lay waiting to reveal its secrets. Reed, with gloved hands weathered by years of solving mysteries, delicately retrieved the note, knowing that the couple's inadvertent touch had already tainted the evidence. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that Sarah and Michael were merely unwitting players in a tale woven long before their time. The house, once owned by the enigmatic Hargrove family, harbored a past steeped in mystery. Margaret Hargrove, the last resident, had lived a solitary life until her passing, leaving behind a legacy of unanswered questions. Despite the lack of overt suspicion surrounding her death, a sense of unease lingered in the air. Forensic analysis of the note hinted at a past filled with fear and urgency, leading Reed down a path of unraveling the tangled web of the Hargroves' history. Franklin, Margaret's late husband, a respected teacher turned recluse, held a dark secret intertwined with the ominous warning from the past. Through interviews and meticulous research, Reed uncovered the truth buried beneath the surface. Margaret's sister, in a fleeting moment of lucidity, whispered of a debt owed to a mysterious figure known as the Collector. Franklin's descent into paranoia, fueled by gambling debts and looming threats, painted a grim picture of their final days together. The truth, hidden beneath layers of deceit and fear, slowly came to light as the investigation deepened. With the aid of forensic experts and canine units, Reed unearthed a chilling discovery beneath the house's foundation, a skeleton wrapped in plastic, its identity revealing a long-buried secret. Victor Mercer, the missing loan shark and collector, had met a grim fate at the hands of Franklin in a desperate bid to protect his family. As the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, the shadows of the past cast a haunting presence over the house. Margaret's diary entries, hidden away in the attic, bore witness to the torment she endured in the aftermath of that fateful night. The echoes of the past, manifested in the phantom knocks that plagued her, resonated through the empty halls, a reminder of the price paid for keeping a deadly secret. The case, finally closed after years of speculation and uncertainty, brought a semblance of closure to the lingering mystery. Justice, though belated, had been served. Sarah and Michael, unable to bear the weight of the house's dark history, bid farewell to its haunted halls, leaving behind whispers of the past that refused to fade. The vacant house stood as a silent sentinel, its walls echoing with the unanswered questions of those who had once called it home. Rumors swirled among the locals, tales of spectral knocks in the dead of night, a ghostly reminder of the secrets buried within its walls. The chilling message of the note, preserved in evidence storage, served as a cautionary tale. Don't trust the one who knocked. Detective Reed, in her final report, mused on the enigmatic nature of unsolved mysteries, acknowledging that some truths may forever elude our grasp. The house, now a relic of the past, held within its walls the echoes of lives intertwined by fate and tragedy. A story whispered in the silence of the night, a story that would never truly be forgotten. Story 21, The Enigmatic Victorian. She crossed the threshold of the front door, a dance of dust swirling in the stagnant air around her. The abandoned Victorian stood frozen in time, its peeling walls and draped furniture telling tales of neglect. Each step she took felt like a journey into a suspended moment, except for one peculiar detail that defied the stillness: the doors. Every door she opened led her back to the same room, the parlor, no matter the path she chose. A maze of corridors that circled back upon themselves, trapping her in a loop of familiarity. The only escape route seemed to be the way she had entered, but when she turned to retrace her steps, the front door had vanished into thin air, leaving her stranded in a labyrinth of her own making. The discovery of Morgan Pierce's lifeless body had transformed the once abandoned Victorian into a scene shrouded in mystery and tragedy. Detective Sarah Lind lingered at the threshold, observing the forensic team moving through the dimly lit interior like phantoms in the night. The house had earned a reputation among the locals, whispered about as the place where compasses spun aimlessly and shadows seemed to whisper secrets to those who dared to listen. Now it held secrets far darker and more haunting than mere urban legends. The initial examination indicates she's been deceased for approximately 3 days, the medical examiner murmured, his voice barely audible in the eerie silence of the room. The cause of death appears to be asphyxiation. Morgan Pierce had been found seated in an antique chair in the parlor, her gaze fixed on the main entrance as if awaiting an unseen visitor. Her expression serene, hands folded neatly in her lap, devoid of any signs of struggle or resistance. The stillness of the scene sent shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned investigators, a silence pregnant with unanswered questions. "Who discovered the body?" Lind inquired, her gaze scanning the notes in her hand. "A real estate agent showing the property to potential buyers," her partner replied. "They stumbled upon her sitting there, mistaking her for a trespasser until they drew closer." The Victorian had remained uninhabited since the passing of its previous owner, Eleanor Blackwood, nearly half a decade ago. Legal disputes had left the property in a state of limbo, unwanted, unsold, and fading into obscurity, save for the occasional visit from vandals seeking thrills in the darkness of its halls. Morgan Pierce, a 26-year-old graduate student delving into the realm of architectural anomalies for her thesis, was described by friends as meticulous, driven, and captivated by spaces that defied traditional norms of design. The abandoned Victorian, with its reputation for disorienting visitors, had undoubtedly beckoned to her like a siren's call. Her roommate reported her missing 2 days ago, Lind noted. She mentioned visiting the house where people get lost for her research. As the investigation unfolded, it came to light that Morgan had frequented the house in the weeks leading up to her untimely demise. Her journal entries painted a picture of bizarre acoustic phenomena, unexplained pockets of cold air, and doors that seemed to lead to different destinations each time they were opened. In her final entry, she spoke of bringing specialized equipment to capture what she cryptically referred to as spatial incongruities. Yet that equipment remained elusive, lost in the shadows of the Victorians' enigmatic chambers. During the autopsy, a startling revelation emerged. Traces of a rare alkaloid were found in Morgan's system, a substance derived from a plant used in ancient shamanic practices. While the alkaloid was known to induce disorientation and vivid hallucinations, the quantities found in Morgan's body were insufficient to be fatal. She wasn't one to dabble in recreational substances, her boyfriend asserted during interrogation. Morgan was meticulous in her research methods. She wouldn't have jeopardized her perceptions knowingly. Digital sleuthing unveiled fragments of deleted messages from Morgan's phone, exchanges with an individual who shared her fascination with a house, someone who claimed to comprehend its hidden truths. The dialogues grew increasingly intimate and cryptic, hinting at a shared revelation that danced just beyond the realm of comprehension. The house retains the memories of its past, one message whispered. It yearns for someone to acknowledge its secrets. The investigation led Lind and her team to Adam Reeves, an architectural historian whose expertise in rare spatial anomalies had captivated Morgan's attention. Their professional rapport had blossomed into something deeper, a connection rooted in a shared quest for understanding the mysteries that lingered within the Victorians' ancient walls. When questioned, Reeves appeared genuinely distraught by Morgan's passing. "The house bears a legacy," he explained. "The original architect wove optical illusions and deceptive perspectives into its very fabric. It was designed to bewilder and beguile. Morgan believed there was more to it than mere tricks of the eye, a deeper truth waiting to be unveiled." However, Reeves possessed a solid alibi for the estimated time of Morgan's demise, backed by security footage showing him delivering a lecture at a university symposium miles away from the Victorians' haunting embrace. A breakthrough emerged from an unexpected source: Eleanor Blackwood's grandson, now residing in a distant land. When approached by the investigators, he unveiled a family secret buried beneath layers of silence for generations. "My grandmother was not the sole Blackwood to meet her end within those walls," he disclosed. "Others shared her fate, always discovered in the parlor, always in a state of tranquility. The family termed it the claiming." He presented the investigators with journals spanning decades, chronicling deaths initially attributed to natural causes such as heart failure or strokes. Yet a pattern emerged: those who spent prolonged periods within the confines of the house ultimately succumbed to what the family euphemistically dubbed the influence. A secondary search of the property unveiled a hidden compartment concealed behind the parlor's fireplace. Within its confines lay Morgan's missing equipment, alongside a myriad of artifacts from diverse indigenous cultures, meticulously arranged in a geometric tableau. At the heart of the collection rested a weathered figurine, its features smoothed by the touch of generations past. Analysis identified the effigy as a representation of a deity associated with liminal spaces, the thresholds between worlds. Traces of the alkaloid discovered in Morgan's system adorned the relics, linking her fate to the ancient forces that dwelled within the Victorians' embrace. The case took a chilling turn when forensic analysis of the dust patterns within the house unveiled the presence of an unknown individual at the time of Morgan's demise. Partial fingerprints, distinct from Morgan's or any documented visitors, adorned the doorknobs scattered throughout the Victorians' labyrinthine passages. 3 weeks into the investigation, Adam Reeves was discovered lifeless in his apartment, mirroring Morgan's peaceful repose with traces of the same alkaloid in his system. Clenched in his grasp was a key that defied identification within his living quarters, yet slotted effortlessly into the concealed compartment within the Victorian's depths. In his final correspondence, a missive directed to himself as a testament to the truth, Reeves inscribed, "The house does not ensnare you physically, it ensnares your perception." Morgan was correct, the doors led where they have always led, yet a deceptive force convinces you that you are traversing in circles. Once you grasp the verity, you can depart at any moment. Alas, by then, the desire to leave has waned. The investigation lingered in a liminal state, designated as suspicious deaths under ongoing scrutiny. The Victorian was officially condemned, its entry barred by the authorities, yet whispers persisted of spectral lights flickering within its confines on certain moonlit nights, and of guests who ventured in but never emerged. Some locals whispered that the house claimed those who delved too deeply into its enigmas. Others harbored the belief that Morgan and Reeves had unearthed a force ancient and potent, one existing within the interstices of conventional reality. The veracity of these tales remained as elusive as an escape route in a house where every door led back to the beginning, a cyclical dance of shadows and secrets that echoed through the corridors of time. Story 22. In the heart of the city stood a quaint coffee shop, a place of quiet routine and hidden mysteries. For years, a man frequented this establishment, his presence as constant as the rising sun. He would occupy the same table, order the same black coffee without sugar, and immerse himself in a world of solitude, his name a whispered enigma upon his departure. The barista recognized his face, a silent acknowledgement passing between them with each visit. But to others he remained a stranger, a ghostly figure in the bustling cafe. Then one fateful day he broke his pattern. The man did not grace the coffee shop with his presence, leaving behind a solitary wallet as the only trace of his existence. Detective Sarah Mercer delved into the mystery, her curiosity piqued by the absence of a name to match the face. The wallet revealed a driver's license bearing a photo, yet the space for a name and address lay hauntingly blank, a void where identity should have resided. Security footage unveiled the unimaginable, a man known only as John Doe entering the shop, taking his usual seat, and vanishing into the ether without a trace. As Detective Mercer studied the footage, a sense of unease crept over her. The man, ordinary in appearance, had left no clue to his whereabouts. Each frame of the video held a silent secret, a puzzle waiting to be unraveled. The tech specialist replayed the scenes, each viewing deepening the enigma surrounding John Doe's disappearance. The missing man's belongings painted a cryptic picture, the blank spaces of his identity mirrored in the empty fields of his possessions. His credit cards led to nowhere, his cash organized with precision, a receipt marking his last known visit. Among these mundane items, a lone business card beckoned with a faded phone number, a silent invitation into the unknown. The barista, a silent observer to the man's routine, offered sparse details, a soft-spoken figure, a solitary patron lost in his thoughts. No connections, no conversations, just a man and his notebook, a world of coded symbols and enigmatic sketches. The notebook, a treasure trove of mysteries, resisted decryption, its pages a labyrinth of untold secrets. As Mercer delved deeper, a pattern emerged, a subtle flicker in the security footage each morning, a momentary disruption in the fabric of time. The detective returned to the coffee shop, drawn to the enigmatic mirror that hung between realms, its ornate frame a gateway to the unknown. The mirror's distorted reflection whispered of hidden truths, its surface warm to the touch, a portal to another reality. Behind the mirror's facade, a hidden chamber revealed itself, a secret sanctuary of forgotten identities and lost time. Wallets stacked in eerie uniformity, each bearing the same photo of the elusive John Doe, driver's licenses devoid of names but brimming with possibilities. A journal chronicling decades of experimentation lay nestled among the artifacts, its final entry a chilling testament to a world beyond comprehension. The journal spoke of temporal anomalies, of windows between worlds, of a reality poised on the brink of convergence. Mercer's investigation unearthed a web of intrigue, a tapestry woven with threads of scientific ambition and existential dread. The man who didn't exist, the phantom of the coffee shop, stood at the nexus of a cosmic experiment gone awry. Amidst whispers of parallel realities and quantum mirrors, a former physicist emerged from the shadows, her words a beacon of understanding in a sea of uncertainty. Daniel Weston, the missing man, a brilliant mind lost to the ethers of time, his legacy a cautionary tale of boundaries crossed and destinies entwined. In the dim light of the coffee shop, Mercer confronted the echoes of a man lost to his own creation, a doppelganger watching from the shadows, a specter of what once was and what could never be again. The shattered mirror, a shattered gateway to the unknown, bore witness to the final act of a cosmic drama, its fragments a silent testament to the mysteries that lie beyond our grasp. The case of the man who didn't exist faded into legend, a tale whispered among the city's nocturnal dwellers, a riddle without a solution. The coffee shop, a sanctuary of secrets, closed its doors, its walls holding memories of a man lost to time. Detective Mercer, haunted by the enigma she could not solve, retreated into the shadows, her own reflection a reminder of a world where reality and illusion danced as one. And in the stillness of the night, the echo of a nameless man lingered, a ghostly presence in a world of forgotten dreams. Story 23. The aged apartment held its secrets, pipes groaning, floorboards whispering tales of time gone by, but the new tenant sensed a presence beyond the ordinary. The footsteps echoed from above, a steady rhythm that defied explanation, yet she resided on the highest floor. One fateful night she summoned her courage and tapped the ceiling with a broomstick. The sound ceased, silence draped the space. Then a solitary knock reverberated from within the ceiling. Sarah Coleman chose to keep the mysterious knocking to herself, attributing it to the settling of the building, or perhaps a curious critter exploring the attic's shadows. As the relentless footsteps persisted each night, she adapted, seeking refuge in louder television volumes, donning headphones at bedtime, anything to mask the methodical cadence that traversed her ceiling under the cloak of darkness. Detective Morris's introduction to the apartment came through a maintenance worker's accidental discovery of a concealed crawl space during routine repairs. The worker, fixing a leak outside Sarah's unit, uncovered an uncharted passage hidden behind a removed section of drywall. His flashlight unveiled a makeshift living nook, scattered food remnants, discarded water bottles, a soiled blanket, and a weathered notebook. The building superintendent promptly contacted the authorities. Detective Morris, accompanied by his partner Detective Rivera, encountered the shaken maintenance worker muttering about an enigmatic presence residing within the walls. The notebook chronicled intricate observations of Sarah Coleman, her daily routines, her visitors, her meals, her entertainment choices, even her moments of slumber. The script, once meticulous, devolved into erratic scrawls towards the end, interspersed with cryptic symbols. The subject no longer acknowledges my signals, The final entry lamented, "She has chosen to dismiss me. No one dismisses me." Forensic experts combed the crawl space, unearthing fingerprints untraceable in any database. They unveiled a labyrinth of hidden passages woven into the building's structure, some dating back decades. The passages linked to 5 different apartments, culminating in observation points disguised as innocuous fixtures or minor damages, all converging within Sarah Coleman's domain. Interviews with current residents yielded no peculiar accounts, but former tenants painted a different narrative. 3 predecessors of Sarah's spoke of a persistent sense of being watched or hearing inexplicable movements. One tenant had fled after a mere fortnight, their experiences left unspoken for fear of sounding paranoid. The case cracked open with the discovery of microscopic blood traces in one of the hidden spaces. DNA analysis connected the blood to Martin Weaver, a former tenant who had vanished without a trace 4 years prior. Detective Morris revisited Martin's disappearance, unearthing accounts of disturbances above his apartment and a confrontation with Edward, a reclusive individual residing overhead. Shortly thereafter, Martin disappeared, and Edward vacated his unit, leaving no forwarding details. A pattern emerged as investigators delved into Edward's past multiple top-floor residences, minimal social connections, abrupt departures. A remote cabin owned by Edward unraveled a chilling mosaic photographs of apartment residents, intricate diagrams of building infrastructure, and journals detailing the maintenance of the habitat. A corkboard served as a macabre centerpiece, adorned with missing persons reports of 6 former tenants from Edward's past abodes. Beneath it, the harsh scars on the floor testified to a grim ritual. Behind the cabin, cadaver dogs led the investigators to freshly disturbed soil, yielding human remains, one grave opening to another in a grim symphony of tragedy. Forensic specialists endeavored to identify the fallen. Detective Morris revisited Sarah's building. While the hidden passages had been sealed, residents reported sporadic sounds lingering. During security upgrades, a cryptic notebook emerged from a crevice in the hallway, signaling a disturbing message. "They found my old nest, but not my new one." The contents mirrored the previous notebook, culminating in a chilling blueprint of Sarah's apartment with a newly marked passage and an ominous date. Rushing to evacuate Sarah, the officers were met with an empty abode, a cryptic message etched on the bathroom mirror, "Look up." The ceiling panel above the shower had vanished. The pursuit of Edward, now identified as Edward Mercer, a former construction specialist, continues. His crafty manipulation of building structures birthed a clandestine network of observation points and passages. Thermal scans revealed no current presence within the walls. Sarah Coleman remains missing, her fate intertwined with vanishing acts across state lines. Authorities caution against concealed spaces in apartment complexes, a haunting reminder of those who vanish without a trace. Amidst the echoes of Sarah's apartment, Detective Morris is haunted not by the graves or the journals, but by the phantom footsteps above her in an apartment with no upper neighbor. The haunting rhythm that answered her call. And sometimes, in the solitude of his own dwelling, Detective Morris gazes upward, attuned to the silence, pondering who else may be listening in the shadows of the night. Story 24. The old apartment exuded a sense of history, its walls holding secrets whispered by time itself. The heating system groaned in protest, the pipes rattled like a distant melody, familiar echoes of a bygone era, or so she thought. Until that fateful moment when a voice, barely a whisper, drifted through the vents like a ghostly caress. It wasn't the usual background noise of everyday life. It was a beckoning, a calling out to her in the stillness of the night. She hesitated, her heart quickening as she leaned closer to the vent, the chill of the air brushing against her skin. And then, almost teasingly, the voice spoke again, soft and eerie. "I know you're listening." Detective Morgan Shaw stood in the heart of the empty apartment, a shroud of mystery enveloping her as she gazed at the rusted vent cover, forcibly removed from its place. Around her, the forensics team meticulously combed through the scene, capturing every detail with their cameras. Alina Reeves, the missing woman whose fate had led them here, had vanished without a trace until the faint odor had betrayed her whereabouts. And what they discovered within the ventilation system was beyond comprehension. Officer Patel recounted the chilling details from his notes, mentioning Alina's reports of hearing voices through the vents, dismissed by the building management as mere quirks of an aging structure. As Shaw knelt beside the vent, tracing the desperate marks etched into the metal, a realization dawned upon her. These scratches were not made by tools but by frantic hands, clawing from within, a desperate bid for escape. Alina, a beloved kindergarten teacher with a penchant for nurturing life, had succumbed to a paranoia that had gripped her in the days leading to her disappearance. Her sister's trembling voice had recounted Alina's fears of being watched, of voices that spoke to her through the very walls of her sanctuary. Surveying the apartment with newfound insight, Shaw noticed the subtle signs of a presence lingering: a chair positioned beneath the vent, the untouched coffee mug, the bed made with precision. It was as though someone had been there, unseen yet palpably close. The forensic report painted a haunting picture, linking fibers from the vent to Alina's belongings, a foreign fingerprint on the vent cover, and most unsettling, audio recordings from Alina's phone capturing the eerie exchanges between her and an unseen interlocutor. Diving deeper into the building's history, Shaw unearthed a pattern of tenants fleeing the premises, each haunted by inexplicable phenomena: noises in the walls, hallucinations of voices beckoning from the darkness. And at the center of it all stood Harold Weber, the unassuming building superintendent with a key to every door. In the interrogation room, Weber's facade of indifference cracked ever so slightly when questioned about the previous occupants of apartment 4. His evasive answers hinted at a truth he dared not reveal, a truth Shaw was determined to uncover. The investigation took a chilling turn when a hidden passage was discovered in Alina's bathroom, leading to a labyrinth of maintenance tunnels that snaked through the building like veins. Within this clandestine network lay evidence of a voyeur lurking within the walls, a phantom observer who had made a home amidst the shadows. Weber's meticulously organized files revealed a disturbing obsession with his victims, his digital archives cataloging their lives in intimate detail. His narrative of a shared connection with Alina, of a bond forged in whispered conversations, sent shivers down Shaw's spine. The final pieces of the puzzle fell into place when a storage unit linked to Weber unveiled a trove of mementos from past tenants, preserved like relics of a twisted shrine. It was a testament to his twisted fixation, a testament to the lengths he would go to in pursuit of his macabre desires. As Weber was led away in handcuffs, his serene smile sent a chill through the room, his parting words a haunting echo of a disturbed mind convinced of its own infamy. The trial that followed painted a portrait of a man consumed by his delusions, a man whose reality had merged with the very walls he inhabited. But justice prevailed, and Weber's conviction brought a semblance of closure to the horrors he had unleashed. Yet the building stood as a silent witness to it all, its walls holding memories that refused to fade. Residents came and went, fleeing the whispers that lingered in the vents, the shadows that danced in the corners. The old heating system groaned, the pipes rattled a symphony of secrets that whispered through the night, a lullaby of the forgotten souls that haunted its halls. And in the darkness, the echoes of a voice lingered, a reminder of the chilling legacy that dwelled within the walls. Story 25. The real estate listing made no mention of a basement. The blueprints held no clue to its existence. Yet, as the family peeled back the old carpet, they stumbled upon a hidden door. A door adorned with a heavy, rusted handle that took 3 of them to pry open. A rush of stale air greeted them, carrying the musty aroma of damp earth. Descending the steps into the darkness, they braced themselves for a storage space. But what they found was far from expected, a solitary chair beneath a swaying light bulb, casting eerie shadows across a row of photographs on the wall. Photographs of them. The Mercer family had moved into the suburban home in the depths of winter, where the early darkness enveloped the neighborhood in a shroud of mystery. The aging 2-story structure, with its weathered siding and creaking floors, exuded a sense of character and history. Little did they know the depth of history hidden within its walls, poised to collide violently with their present. Detective Sarah Connors and her partner arrived at the property, the crime scene unit already at work securing the area with fluttering yellow tape. Mrs. Mercer's voice trembled over the phone as she recounted the chilling discovery beneath their living room floor. Connors wasted no time in instructing the team to document every detail before further exploration. Gloved hands expertly handled cameras as flashes illuminated the small basement, revealing a room with concrete walls painted in somber gray, a lone chair anchored to the floor, and a bare bulb casting haunting shadows. Yet it was the array of photographs that held them in thrall, images of the Mercer family in their most intimate moments, captured without their knowledge. The investigation uncovered a perplexing absence of forced entry or theft, leaving only a profound invasion of privacy in its wake. Forensic analysis revealed fingerprints belonging to previous homeowners, hinting at a disturbing pattern of transient residency. Delving deeper, Connors uncovered a trail of unsettling inconsistencies in the property's history, leading back to a contractor who vehemently denied the existence of the basement. A breakthrough came with the discovery of a hidden memory card containing hundreds of images, showcasing not only the Mercers but a succession of families who had resided in the house. Audio recordings, retrieved from a concealed box, further exposed the extent of the intrusion, with conversations from various rooms captured with chilling clarity. As the investigators unearthed a hidden monitoring station behind the wall of photographs, a portrait emerged of Edward Kelvin, the original builder, who had seemingly vanished without a trace. His meticulous journal chronicled the lives of each family with alarming precision, culminating in a chilling prophecy of the next family's arrival. Fingerprint evidence ultimately led to the startling revelation that Kelvin had never truly departed the house he constructed. Instead, he had woven himself into its very fabric, a ghostly observer of the families who unknowingly shared his dwelling. The manhunt culminated in Kelvin's discovery within the house's labyrinthine passages, his emaciated form a testament to years spent in seclusion. During interrogation, Kelvin spoke of the families as mere players in his private drama, his delusions painting them as willing participants in his voyeuristic narrative. The Mercer family, like those before them, fled the haunting abode, leaving behind their possessions as a grim reminder of the violation they endured. Kelvin's trial unveiled the extent of his surveillance network, a house designed not for comfort but as a stage for his twisted fantasies. As the property was razed to the ground, the families haunted by their unseen watcher grappled with the unsettling realization that their most intimate moments had been catalogued by a spectral presence lurking within the very walls they called home. In quiet moments they found themselves casting uneasy glances at the fixtures and corners, questioning if they were ever truly alone, or if an unseen presence still lingered, silently bearing witness to their lives. Story 26. Once upon a time, a faint flicker danced across the baby monitor's screen, a subtle disturbance in the usual feed. At first, the mother brushed it off as mere interference, a glitch in the technology. But then a crackling static filled the room and a soft voice whispered through the speakers, "SHHH, go back to sleep." A chill ran down her spine, sending shivers through her very soul. With a racing heart, she hurried to her son's room, dread gnawing at her insides. However, upon reaching the nursery, she found the crib empty, devoid of her precious child. The window remained shut, the door securely locked. The only anomaly was a stuffed rabbit lying on the floor, its dark glass eyes fixated on her, seemingly knowing something she did not. Panic seized her, and she screamed until her voice grew hoarse, the terror consuming her whole being. The neighbors, startled by her cries, summoned help, and soon the authorities arrived on the scene. They discovered the mother, Rebecca, clutching the stuffed rabbit tightly, her eyes hollow with fear, lost in a nightmare she couldn't escape. Her infant son, Samuel, had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a void in her heart and a mystery that perplexed even the seasoned investigators. The initial search yielded no clues, no forced entry, no signs of disturbance, only the eerie remnants of that haunting voice on the baby monitor. Suspicions turned towards Rebecca, the grieving mother, especially with her history of seeking help for postpartum depression. Her husband, Daniel, was away on business during the disappearance, adding a layer of complexity to the already tangled web of uncertainties. Whispers floated through the community, casting shadows of doubt upon Rebecca's innocence. But then a glimmer of hope emerged in the form of microscopic fibers found on the nursery windowsill, fibers belonging to a rare climbing rope, hinting at an intruder's unconventional entry into the home. The investigation took a new direction as security footage from neighboring homes revealed a mysterious figure lurking in the shadows, moving with calculated precision. Daniel, upon his return, faced scrutiny as well, with his newfound hobby of rock climbing raising eyebrows. Unusual calluses on his hands, financial discrepancies, and a hidden second family painted a damning portrait. The pieces of the puzzle slowly fell into place, revealing a sinister plan orchestrated by someone close, someone trusted. As the truth unraveled, the baby monitor emerged as a pivotal piece of evidence, its digital footprint leading investigators to a startling revelation. Samuel was found alive in the care of a woman named Elaine, Daniel's first wife. The tangled web of deceit, betrayal, and obsession came to light, exposing the dark motives that drove a mother to steal another's child. In the courtroom, the hushed silence was shattered by the enhanced audio from the baby monitor, capturing not just the whispered words of the night, but also the unmistakable cough of deceit. Daniel and Elaine's fate was sealed, justice served for the innocent child caught in the crossfire of their greed. Rebecca and Samuel sought solace in a new beginning, far away from the shadows of the past. The baby monitor, with its silent vigil, stood as a testament to the truth that lurked in the darkness, a reminder of the resilience that emerged from the depths of despair. And as the night sky embraced them in its soothing embrace, the whispers of the past faded into the gentle lull of sleep, promising a dawn of peace and redemption. Story 27. In the quiet of the night, let me guide you through a tale that will soothe your mind and carry you into a realm of mystery and relaxation. Close your eyes as we embark on this journey together. She hesitated to ascend the stairs, yet the storm's fury had forced her hand. The attic loomed above, a repository of forgotten treasures shrouded in layers of dust and cobwebs. Amidst the shadows, a peculiar sight caught her eye: the silhouette of an old dollhouse, intricately crafted, its miniature furniture meticulously arranged. As she peered closer, a shiver ran down her spine. The figures within were not mere dolls, but tiny replicas, carved with eerie precision to resemble her family, each one placed with uncanny accuracy, mirroring their real-life counterparts downstairs. Except for one striking difference, the figure meant to represent her stood unnervingly close to the attic door. Rebecca Morgan traced her finger along the roof of the dollhouse, feeling the indentation where the tiny wooden figure stood. A wave of unease washed over her, unrelated to the chilly draft whispering through the rafters. This dollhouse had no place in her life. It belonged to a rental property her family had only recently moved into. The unsettling discovery led Rebecca to reach out to law enforcement, their arrival marking the beginning of a perplexing investigation. The family, huddled in fear in the living room, refused to return to the attic, their distress palpable. Detective Sarah Harmon, the lead investigator, initially brushed off their concerns as a prank or figment of imagination. However, the meticulous craftsmanship of the miniature figures left an indelible impression on her. Each detail captured a unique aspect of the family members, from the father's receding hairline to the mother's birthmark. Forensic examination of the dollhouse unveiled fingerprints that did not match those of the family. Further analysis revealed microscopic cameras embedded in the eyes of each figure, connected to a hidden surveillance system beneath the dollhouse. The realization dawned that someone had been observing the Morgan family, studying their every move with chilling precision. The investigation took a sinister turn with the discovery of a concealed basement entrance behind a pantry wall. Inside, evidence pointed to an intruder who had been living beneath the family's feet for weeks, undetected. Food wrappers, water bottles, and a sleeping bag hinted at a clandestine existence that raised more questions than answers. The absence of forced entry puzzled investigators, delving into the history of the property and its previous occupants. A trail of breadcrumbs led to a small apartment across town, belonging to Martin Wells, the son of the deceased former owners. His financial struggles had driven him to create a hidden living space in the house, unbeknownst to the new tenants. Martin's obsession with the dollhouse and its miniature figures was revealed through a trove of photographs and journals found in his apartment. His fixation on monitoring the lives of others stemmed from a deep-seated need for control, manifested in a disturbingly possessive delusion. During interrogation, Martin remained eerily composed, detailing his motivations with a detached calmness. His actions stemmed from a warped desire to assert dominance over those residing in what he considered his childhood home. The dollhouse served as a twisted symbol of his authority, a means to impose his will upon unsuspecting tenants. The psychological evaluation painted a portrait of a troubled mind grappling with loss and seeking solace in a macabre form of possession. Martin's actions transcended mere voyeurism, delving into the realm of psychological manipulation and trespass against the sanctity of home. As the case unfolded, the Morgan family found solace in a new abode, far removed from the haunting memories of their former residence. Yet the specter of surveillance lingered, prompting Rebecca to remain vigilant, haunted by the fear of unseen eyes watching her every move. Martin Wells faced justice for his crimes, the court recognizing the profound violation he had inflicted upon the Morgan family. The sentencing echoed the sentiments of a community shaken by the revelation of a predator lurking in their midst, preying upon the sanctity of home and hearth. Criminologists pondered the depths of Martin's deception, contemplating how long he might have gone unnoticed had it not been for Rebecca's discovery. His elaborate scheme of covert observation spanned multiple properties, each housing a dollhouse mirroring the lives of its unwitting inhabitants. The tale of the dollhouse serves as a cautionary reminder of the fragility of security and the darkness that may lurk within familiar walls. As you drift into slumber, remember that safety lies not only in locked doors and barred windows, but in the vigilance of the heart against unseen threats. Rest now, dear listener, as the night enfolds you in its soothing embrace, shielding you from the shadows that dance at the edge of dreams. May your rest be undisturbed, your mind at peace, for even in the realm of imagination there are truths that defy explanation. Good night and sweet dreams.